After I got LASIK and new clothes, my brother said my new look would upstage the bride at his wedding, so I stayed home. Now they say I'm selfish. I am 30 years old and the oldest of 2 children. My younger brother Lucas, 27, has always been the family favorite. He played football in high school, attended college on a partial sports scholarship, and currently works as a physical therapist. Everyone usually mentions how attractive and pleasant he is. Meanwhile, I've always been the quiet one, concentrating on school, and eventually a profession in accounting. Growing up, I was considered a late bloomer. I wore heavy glasses, had braces for 4 years, and was very uncomfortable socially. I wasn't overweight, just average and nondescript. Kids at school usually ignored me, which was okay because I liked to read. Lucas, on the other hand, has been popular since elementary school. He frequently had people over, attended parties, and began dating in middle school. My parents, Susan, 54, and Richard, 56, never said anything blatantly unpleasant about my appearance, but there was a clear difference in how they treated us. They attended all of Lucas's games and purchased him costly sporting gear. For me, they'd go to parent-teacher conferences where instructors applauded my grades but scarcely mentioned it at home. When Lucas brought home C's, they would applaud his progress. It was not surprising that I brought home A's. The true difficulty began in high school. Lucas began making comments about my appearance, particularly when his buddies were around. He'd recommend contact lenses or inquire why I never wore makeup. At family events, people would always ask Lucas about ladies and sports, followed by questions about my grades and college ambitions. The message was plain. His value stemmed from his attractiveness and social skills. Mine stemmed from being intelligent and responsible. Something happened during my senior year that left me deeply upset. I'd been accepted to a prominent institution on a half-scholarship. I was ecstatic and hoped my folks would be proud. When I informed him during dinner, my mother thought it was great and quickly went to Lucas to inquire about his forthcoming prom date. That's when I understood they valued his social life over mine. Achievements College was better for me. I made a few close friends, joined the debate team, and really got into my stride intellectually. I still looked pretty much the same, with spectacles, no cosmetics, and modest attire. I dated briefly, but nothing serious. Lucas attended a state school closer to home and continued to play football. My parents paid him regular visits, but barely saw me twice in 4 years. Following college, I relocated across the nation for a position with a reputable accounting firm. I assumed the distance would benefit our relationship, and for a time, it did. Phone talks were cordial, and when I came home twice a year, everything seemed regular. Then, this summer, Lucas proposed to his college sweetheart, Catherine, a 26-year-old dental hygienist who is blonde and effervescent. Everyone was overjoyed when the couple announced their engagement during a family cookout. My parents immediately started discussing wedding plans and grandkids. I felt truly thrilled for him. However, during that visit, Lucas stated something that concerned me. We were alone in the kitchen when he announced that Catherine's friends would be bridesmaids. Then he stated, I'd probably want to change my appearance before the wedding photographs because Catherine's side would be all suited up. He advised I acquire contact lenses and perhaps have Catherine assist me with cosmetics and clothing shopping. I did not say anything at the time, but it stayed with me. A few months later, my employer offered to pay for LASIK surgery as part of our health insurance. I had been thinking about it for practical reasons, but Lucas's response spurred me to actually do it. The operation went well, and I was able to see properly without glasses for the first time since I was 9 years old. Around the same time, I received a substantial promotion at work. With the increased money, I decided to upgrade my clothing. Instead of simply buying whatever was on sale, I began browsing at finer places and purchasing clothing that truly fit properly. I also began visiting a reputable salon rather than the inexpensive chain stores I had previously frequented. The largest shift occurred 6 months ago. I walked past a high-end salon and decided to stop in for a consultation. The hairdresser looked at my monotonous brown hair and told me I had wonderful bone structure that was disguised. 3 hours later, I walked out with shoulder-length layers and highlights that made my hair appear practically golden in certain lighting. The transformation was astounding. Without glasses, a good haircut, and clothing that fit, I looked radically different. People at work began treating me differently. Not drastically, but I did notice more smiles, small conversation, and invites to after-work parties. I started dating more seriously and have lately begun seeing someone I truly enjoy. The thing is, I haven't seen my family since before all of these events. We video chat periodically, but I generally position the camera so they can't see anything. I planned to surprise them at Lucas's wedding, hoping they'd be pleased to see how well I looked. But then 3 weeks ago, I received a call from my mother. She said Catherine's mother had seen my LinkedIn profile photo, which I had recently updated with a professional headshot. Apparently Catherine's mother showed it to Catherine, who then showed it to Lucas, who informed my parents. My mother was not pleased. She stated I looked radically different, and that it was inappropriate for the groom's sister to upstage the bride. She thought my blonde hair would clash with the wedding colors, and Catherine was concerned about the photographs. Then she mentioned something that really hit home for me. I was definitely going through a phase and attempting to be someone I wasn't. Lucas phoned me the next day. He stated he understood that I wanted to look well for his wedding, but I had gone too far. He stated that Catherine was concerned about me stealing attention away from her, especially because some of her family would be seeing me for the first time and would assume I was competing with the bride. He requested me to tint my hair brown again before the wedding, and to tone down my makeup and clothing. He stated Catherine valued family photographs and that my new look was too distracting. I was astonished. I was feeling the most confident I'd ever been, and my family was urging me to change back because I might appear too nice at the wedding. I informed Lucas that I would not modify my looks for anybody, and that if Catherine felt intimidated by how I appeared, it was her issue. The conversation became heated. Lucas accused me of being self-centered and that I had always envied his relationship with Catherine. He said that I had been silent and uneasy during their engagement celebration, which was not true. I had just become exhausted from traveling. He said I was finally getting attention from males, and it was getting to my head. That truly stung. I explained to him that I had made these changes for myself, not to compete with anyone. I stated that I was weary of being treated as the ugly sister who should be grateful for any attention. Lucas stated that this was not how people perceived me, but that families made concessions for significant events. My folks contacted me on speakerphone a few days later. They stated they understood my need to appear great, but that I should examine the broader picture. My mother stated that in wedding photographs the bride should be the main focus, and that my significant change in look would be disturbing. My father told me I could go back to blonde after the wedding if I truly wanted to. They also advised that I wear a more conservative dress than the one I had chosen. I purchased a navy blue dress that was not exposing at all, but rather nicely fitting. However, my mother stated that Catherine believed it could be too form-fitting for family portraits. I felt like I was back in high school, being told to reduce myself so Lucas could shine. The message was plain. I was meant to be the plain, quiet sister who fit into the background, and straying beyond that position seemed terrible. I told them I wasn't altering anything about my looks, and that if Catherine was so concerned about her own wedding that she couldn't take her prospective sister-in-law looking lovely, she should rethink marrying. That did not go over well. My mother thought I was being unkind, and Catherine was only trying to make her wedding day perfect. She said that every bride deserved to be the focus of attention on her wedding day, and that I was being intentionally difficult. My family has scarcely spoken to me in the 3 weeks since the wedding. Lucas texted me that if I showed there looking like I do now, I'd be generating unneeded trouble on a special occasion. My mother left a message warning me that if I don't honor the bride's desires, Catherine's family will think less of our family. The fact is, I'm not trying to overshadow anyone. I just want to look like myself. The greatest version of me. I worked hard to enhance my beauty and confidence, and now I'm told to suppress it because it makes others uncomfortable. I'm starting to wonder whether I should miss the wedding entirely. Part of me believes that if my own family isn't thrilled that I'm finally feeling good about myself, they may not deserve to have me around at all. So, am I being unreasonable in refusing to modify my looks for my brother's wedding, or are they asking me to make myself seem worse, merely to make the bride happy? Update 1. I didn't anticipate my post to receive so much attention, so thank you to everyone who responded. The remarks helped me view the problem more clearly. A lot has transpired since I last updated, and things are worse than I expected. First, I should state that I have resolved not to modify anything about my looks. The responses convinced me that my family's request was absurd and that I had every right to dress whatever I wanted during the wedding. But then, approximately a week after I posted, something happened that entirely shifted my perspective on the problem. Lucas's best buddy from college, Ryan, 27, contacted me via social media. We had met a few times over the years but never truly chatted one-on-one. He explained that he needed to tell me something important and asked if we could speak quietly. We ended up having a video conversation, and what he said shocked me. Catherine had apparently been making comments about me for months prior to seeing my new profile photo. Ryan stated that at Lucas and Catherine's engagement party last year, she made repeated remarks about how relieved Lucas's sister was not competing for attention. She clearly stated that I was plain and would not overshadow her during the wedding. But Ryan claimed that things became worse after that. Catherine supposedly spent a big chunk of the evening discussing wedding plans and said that she was happy the photographs will be gorgeous because the wedding party was all attractive individuals, unlike the groom's family. When asked what she meant, she said that Lucas's sister was uncomfortable and unfashionable, but she would blend in. Ryan stated that he had wanted to say anything at the time, but did not want to make any trouble. However, after my parents supposedly phoned Lucas in a panic over my new look, Catherine's response was so strong that Ryan felt compelled to reach out. Ryan characterized Catherine's reaction to my LinkedIn photo as a full meltdown. She called me various insults that I would not mention here, and she refused to let me look better than her bridesmaids. She insisted that Lucas instruct me to change everything back, and when he appeared uncertain, she threatened to postpone the wedding. Ryan claims Catherine spent the whole evening at their apartment combing through my social media sites and showing Lucas images, pointing out how different I appeared and arguing it was deliberate sabotage. She supposedly claimed I was envious of their connection and was attempting to spoil her special day. What truly struck me was what Ryan said next. He informed me that Catherine had persuaded Lucas that I had always been envious of him. Going back to childhood, she seems to have reframed every encounter we'd ever had as me being envious of his success and notoriety. She informed him that making these modifications shortly before the wedding showed that I couldn't abide seeing him happy. The toughest thing was discovering that my parents evidently agreed with Catherine's perspective. Ryan claimed that when Lucas phoned regarding my new appearance, they instantly agreed with Catherine and began discussing how I had always been difficult and jealous as a youngster. Ryan apologized for not speaking out sooner, but he'd finally realized he couldn't keep watching this happen. He said he had known our family for years via Lucas, and that the way they were talking about me was extremely unjust. This talk with Ryan helped me realize that the issue was more than just my appearance at the wedding. My family, led by Catherine, had allegedly been talking about me for months, as if I were some kind of envious, difficult person. They had transformed my good life improvements into proof of character defects. I was very startled. I'd always knew I wasn't the favored child, but I had no idea they deliberately saw me as a nasty person. The thought that they'd been discussing my alleged jealousy and issues behind my back for months was tough to accept. After speaking with Ryan, I decided to phone Lucas personally. I made no mention of Ryan, but I did ask him directly whether he believed I was attempting to spoil his wedding by enhancing my looks. The conversation did not go well. Lucas quickly became defensive, claiming that I was constantly making everything about me. He said that I'd been aloof and strange during family gatherings for years, and that my abrupt metamorphosis was clearly related to his wedding because the timing was unusual. When I tried to explain that my adjustments had nothing to do with him, he cut me off and declared that everything revolved around me as the victim. He said Catherine had helped him identify trends in my conduct that he had been ignoring for years. That's when I understood Catherine had done more than simply affect his impression of my beauty. She had evidently persuaded him to rewrite our whole brother relationship via her perspective. I asked him for specific instances of times when I was jealous or unpleasant, and he failed to come up with anything tangible. He commented that I had been silent throughout their engagement announcement, which I stated was due to my tiredness from flying. He said I never appeared enthused about their relationship, which was false. I had merely been preoccupied with my own life. The longer we chatted, it became evident that Lucas had entirely accepted Catherine's story about me. In his opinion, I was the envious sister who had always despised his happiness and was now attempting to take attention at his wedding. I closed the call by telling him that I was saddened by how he and Catherine were talking about me, and that I wasn't trying to make trouble. I said that I merely wanted to attend his wedding looking like myself, and that if that was too intimidating, I shouldn't come at all. Lucas said that it was probably better if I didn't regard the bride's sentiments. So, with the wedding next week, I plan to stay at home. I've already informed my parents that I won't be attending, and they were relieved rather than sad. The entire event has made me understand that my family's perception of me differs greatly from how I see myself. They seem to perceive me as envious, difficult, and attention-seeking. While I've always tried to be helpful and out of the way, I'm not sure what happens next with my family. But for now, I need some space from them all. Update 2. The wedding occurred 2 weeks ago, and the aftermath has been much more dramatic than I anticipated. I did not attend, as I said in my last report. Instead, I spent the weekend in a spa facility approximately 2 hours away from my city. I turned off my phone and focused on resting and absorbing what had transpired. When I finally checked my messages Sunday evening, I saw dozens of missed calls and texts from various family members and friends. At first, I assumed something dreadful had occurred, but as I went through the texts, I discovered the drama was all about me not being present. Apparently, numerous relatives wondered where I was throughout the reception. My parents had informed others that I was unwell, but my Aunt Tina, my father's sister, knew I lived close and offered to check on me. Tina became skeptical and began to ask additional questions when my parents indicated it wasn't necessary. The truth came out when one of Lucas's college acquaintances, who was aware of the situation, told another relative that I had opted not to attend due to concerns about my looks. Word went rapidly across the family, and by the conclusion of the reception, most people were aware that there had been some sort of family drama involving me and Catherine. My Aunt Tina contacted me on Monday morning. She was unhappy because no one had informed her what was actually going on, and she wanted to hear my side of things. I told her the basic facts. Catherine and my family had requested me to modify my look for the wedding, and I had opted not to go rather than cause complications. Tina was infuriated. She claimed she had observed my parents treating Lucas and me differently over the years, but she had no idea it had become that terrible. She thought the concept of expecting me to make myself appear bad for someone else's wedding was ludicrous. I didn't anticipate Tina to contact my parents and tell them what was on her mind. She allegedly told them that they should be ashamed of themselves for supporting Catherine over their own daughter, and that missing their child's wedding for something so trivial would be something they'd regret forever. This resulted in a heated family quarrel. My parents contacted me Wednesday night, and they were both angry. They said Tina had no right to be engaged in our family affairs, and that I was causing issues by discussing private topics with cousins. My mother claimed I had humiliated them by not coming up, and Catherine's family was curious as to why the groom's sister was not at the wedding. She stated that people were beginning to believe there was something really wrong with our family. My father told me that I had been selfish, and that missing Lucas's wedding was something I would never be able to undo. He stated that whatever difficulties I had with Catherine could have been resolved after the wedding, but that I had chosen to make a statement rather than be present for my brother. When I said that they had chosen Catherine's sentiments over mine months before the wedding, the conversation became quite heated. My mother replied it wasn't true and that they were only trying to preserve the peace. I asked her why it always appeared like preserving the peace meant giving up what I wanted. And she said that was ludicrous. But when I asked her to think of a single instance where they had asked Lucas to compromise for my sake, she couldn't come up with one. That's when my father said something incredibly hurtful. He said that I was always troublesome, and that they had spent years walking on eggshells around me. He stated, Lucas was simple to please and appreciative for what he had, but I was constantly seeking reasons to be dissatisfied. I was astonished. I asked him if I'd ever been difficult or ungrateful, and he answered it was simply my overall attitude over time. When I probed for details, he remarked that I'd been silent and introverted at family gatherings, and that I'd never seemed enthusiastic about family news or events. I discovered my parents had entirely changed our family history. In their eyes, I was suddenly the problem kid who had always been difficult to deal with, despite the fact that I had never created any significant difficulty, had performed well in school, and had developed a successful profession. The meeting concluded with them telling me that if I wanted to be a member of the family, I needed to apologize to Lucas and Catherine for skipping the wedding and causing trouble. I have not made that apology, and I do not intend to. But the scenario became increasingly odd last week. Lucas called, and I almost did not answer. When I did, he sounded different from our prior calls, less furious and more perplexed. He said that he and Catherine had returned from their honeymoon, and that there had been some concerns during the trip that prompted him to contact me. Apparently, Catherine kept bringing up the wedding on their honeymoon, emphasizing how grateful she was that I hadn't been present to cause difficulties. Lucas admitted that he first agreed with her, but she refused to let the issue go. According to Lucas, Catherine spent a good chunk of their honeymoon discussing about me and evaluating my reasons. She seemed to have theories about why I had changed my look, why I had skipped the wedding, and what I could do next to attract attention. Lucas stated that by the conclusion of the vacation, he was weary of talking about me, and preferred to focus on their new marriage. But whenever he attempted to change the subject, Catherine would bring it back to the drama with me, and how it had damaged her wedding day. He stated something snapped for him when Catherine mentioned how my absence was most likely planned to create maximum drama, and have people talking about me, rather than celebrating their marriage. Lucas recognized Catherine seemed to think more about me than I did about her, and that the preoccupation might not be coming from my end. Lucas questioned me directly whether I had skipped the wedding to hurt him or get attention. I told him honestly that I just wanted to avoid making things worse and that I believed my absence would be more convenient for everyone than my presence. He remained silent for a long time before expressing concern that things had gotten out of control. He said that he was beginning to think Catherine's reservations about my looks were overstated, and that he wished we had all handled the matter better, But then he said something that made me think he still wasn't sure what had happened. He expressed optimism that we could move on from this, and that I would make an effort to get along with Catherine in the future. I informed him that I'd never had a bad relationship with Catherine, and that she'd obviously been making disparaging remarks about me for months before I realized there was an issue. I explained that the problem wasn't that I didn't get along with her, but that she refused to accept that I may look different than before. Lucas appeared astonished by this, which made me believe Catherine's concerns to him were likely more subtle than Ryan had stated. Lucas finished the call by expressing he wanted to sort things out, but it would take time, and Catherine was still unhappy about what had transpired. I told him I wasn't going to apologize for how I looked or for skipping a wedding where I wasn't really welcome, but I hoped things would get better between us someday. Right now, I'm not sure what will happen next with my family. Lucas seemed to be realizing that the matter may be more complicated than he first assumed, but my parents are steadfast in their belief that I am the tough one who caused difficulties. I'm not expecting any significant changes in how people perceive me, but at least I now have a better understanding of where I stand with each of them. Update 3. I wasn't planned on posting another update, but so much has transpired that I thought people would be interested in knowing how things ended. The most significant development is that Lucas and Catherine are experiencing major marital troubles, which are linked to the overall situation with me and the wedding. Lucas contacted me around 3 weeks ago and asked if we might meet in person the next time I was home. I told him I wasn't planning any travels home soon, but we could video chat if he wanted to talk. What he told me during that call was rather eye-opening. Catherine's fascination with me seems to have continued after their honeymoon. She's been bringing me up on a daily basis, evaluating my social media postings and guessing on the reasons behind my different life decisions. Lucas stated that Catherine had been monitoring my LinkedIn profile regularly to see whether I had changed my photo or work information. She'd also been stalking my little social media presence, commenting on whatever I posted, even if it was as insignificant as a snapshot of a book I was reading or a restaurant I frequented. The breaking point came when I shared a photo from a business conference I had attended. It was just a professional snapshot of me with some coworkers, but Catherine noticed it and spent the entire evening telling Lucas how I was definitely attempting to flaunt my new look and attract the attention of males at work. Lucas claimed he eventually informed her that her continual emphasis on me was causing a problem in their marriage and that she should think about why she was so concerned about what I was doing with my life. That resulted in a heated argument in which Catherine accused Lucas of siding with me against her. She said that despite having skipped the ceremony, I was still attempting to interfere with their marriage, and that Lucas was being naive about my intentions. Lucas stated that this was the point at which he understood Catherine's troubles with me went much beyond her wedding fears. He began to pay attention to how she spoke about other women in general, and he realized that she frequently made disparaging remarks about female colleagues, his friends' girlfriends, and even strangers we encountered while out together. Around the same time, Ryan, Lucas's buddy who had first contacted me, appears to have had another conversation with Lucas. Ryan informed him of some more statements Catherine had made about me that he had not previously discussed, including her statement that I was probably envious of their relationship since I couldn't find a steady boyfriend myself. Ryan was unaware that I had been in a relationship for some months at that point. When Lucas conveyed this to Catherine and suggested that she had been mistaken about my goals, Catherine became enraged and claimed that I was probably making up the boyfriend for attention. Lucas saw a trend of Catherine thinking the worst about others, especially other women, and refusing to accept the possibility that she was mistaken about their goals. The matter escalated 2 weeks ago when Catherine learned that I had been promoted at work. My employer had made a notice on its website, and Catherine spotted it. She showed it to Lucas and said I was obviously attempting to make them appear terrible by being more successful than they were. Lucas stated he'd had enough. He informed Catherine that my professional success had nothing to do with their marriage, and that her obsessive concentration on me was harmful and destructive to their relationship. Catherine did not take it well. According to Lucas, she stated that if he couldn't see how I was attempting to mislead and harm their family, he might not be the guy she believed she married. She said I had been playing games for years and that Lucas was falling for my ruse. Lucas stated that the chat made him understand that Catherine had developed a complete dream about me as this manipulative person who was covertly scheming against them. He began to reflect on what she had said about me over the months, realizing that the majority of her proof for my alleged jealousy and manipulation was simply me going about my usual life. He stated he attempted to get Catherine to try couples therapy to help her overcome her fixation with me, but she refused. She stated that the issue was not her reaction to my conduct, but my behavior itself, and that therapy would be ineffective unless I admitted what I was doing wrong. So Lucas and Catherine are now separated. She went back home with her parents last week, and Lucas believes they will divorce. He phoned to apologize for not seeing things clearly previously. He said he got caught up in Catherine's account of events and hadn't considered if her interpretation of my actions made sense. Lucas said that Catherine had asked our family to control me rather than deal with her own insecurities, and that everyone had agreed since it looked simpler than questioning her. He also claimed to have spoken with our parents and attempted to persuade them that they had handled the problem incorrectly. According to Lucas, they are still somewhat protective about their behavior, but they are beginning to see that pressuring me to modify my look was definitely a mistake. My parents haven't contacted me personally yet, but Lucas suggested they may. He stated they looked ashamed by how things had turned out, especially now that it was evident Catherine's fears about me were exaggerations. In terms of my connection with Lucas, we've begun to communicate more frequently, and things are gradually improving. He expressed his desire to mend our connection and apologized for allowing Catherine's thoughts to affect how he perceived me. I accepted his apologies, but I also informed him that the incident had taught me how easily my family might turn against me. I expressed worry that none of them had questioned Catherine's assessment of my conduct or examined whether she was the one with a problem. Lucas agreed that this was reasonable and understood why I would not trust the family's judgment in the future. Right now, I'm keeping my distance from my parents until they're ready to have an open discussion about how they handled the situation. I'm not upset with them, but I also don't want to pretend everything is okay when it isn't. As for Catherine, I have no desire to be in a relationship with her, and I doubt she will be in my life for much longer. The entire experience has taught me that family members may choose to perceive you in whichever manner is most comfortable for them, regardless of fact. It's disheartening to discover that my parents and Lucas were so eager to accept a negative interpretation of my behavior, but it's also liberating to stop attempting to control their opinions. I'm focused on my profession, my relationship, and the family members who know me well enough to give me the benefit of the doubt. Life is too short to try to convince others that you are not the evil they have made you out to be. My brother said, "I can't heal if you're happy." So my parents banned me from gaming. Then I caught him taking cash from kids playing my PS5. My foster brother believed that I was humiliating him for his difficult background by playing video games, and our parents agreed. Travis spent the first 12 years of his life in one of the city's deadliest crack houses. Despite this, he said that it did not cause him any trauma or PTSD. He was proud of his ability to remain unaffected until one year, when he discovered that my Christmas present was worth $15 more than his own. Suddenly he was a devastated victim suffering from profound PTSD. And witnessing younger children get good things triggered his buried memories. When my 9-year-old cousin received LED lights for her birthday, he destroyed the controller since he grew up without light. He also urged my aunt to cease buying Christmas presents for her children, and then insisted that our parents pay him with monthly surprise gifts. And when I bought a PS5 with my own money, he said it was emotional violence. I first informed him that he too could play. Even offered to purchase him a bespoke controller. But he declined. My parents only allowed me to play while he wasn't in the living room, per his request. I even tried headphones, but they weren't enough. Travis didn't feel secure strolling around the home while his suppressed trauma was pushed in his face. Within a week, I had relocated the PS5 to my bedroom, where the display was running at 25 frames per second. That pleased Travis for 3 days. I arrived home from school to find Mom clutching him on the bathroom floor. He was shivering, and tears streamed down his face. When he noticed me, he began to back away, like a mouse sighting a cat. After 15 minutes of sobbing, he told me how he saw the PS5 menu while strolling past my room. "All those other kids," he cried. "They had bedrooms and games. I had nothing." Mom chose a side. She stared at me as if I were the one who had reared him in the crack house. The new guidelines were implemented immediately. Travis retires to his room at 10 p.m., thus just 2 hours of PS5 are allowed after that time. Minimum TV brightness to prevent the light from shining through beneath the door for him to see. When I attempted to object, Dad answered, "He's never had what you have." Are games worth ruining his recovery? They made me feel like the evil guy. So for the following 3 weeks, I worked really hard. I obeyed all the rules and concentrated solely on having fun while playing. But then Travis began documenting my transgressions. He took photos of the light under my door, stating it provided him with glimpses of what he had missed. Recordings of forceful clicking on my controller from the hallway. After enough of these transgressions, my parents gave me a choice. Give up the PlayStation 5 or relocate it to the basement. I selected the basement. There was no warmth, and spiders dropped from the ceiling onto my head. The old TV only had about 3 functional pixels, but I could turn up the volume and play for as long as I wanted. That was what they told Travis until he failed his midterm. He'd been skipping class to hang out with college students and use weed. However, failure was still my responsibility. He told our parents that he could hear the PS5 through the floor during his study sessions but chose not to say anything, so I got to experience what he never had. My folks viewed him as a martyr. The next day, they carried my PlayStation 5 into our garage, which had not been utilized in years. This way, Travis couldn't hear. The garage was packed with open paint cans from the 1980s, dead wasps, cockroaches, ants, and creatures that science had yet to find. That's where I spent my Saturdays, as gaming was once again prohibited on weekdays. It remained like way for 4 months. Nobody complained. But Travis needed something from the garage. When he walked in, he experienced full-body shakes. He slumped on the floor and required assistance. That's when my parents decided they were finished. The only viable option was to sell the PlayStation 5. "He can play mobile games," Travis said, still acting like Mother Teresa. "That's what poor children did." "That is what I did." My parents nodded. Mom started browsing for used PlayStation 5s on eBay. That was when I snapped. "Shut up." The words erupted. I offered to share. "I did all you requested." Travis reprised his role as the victim. "I am sorry I was poor, okay? It is my fault that I am traumatized and that my parents have beaten me. I am such a failure." "It's okay, Travis," Mom said, hugging him. His expression turned to a grin. "He's going to sell that console, honey. Do not worry, I could not handle it anymore." "I'm done," I shouted. "Do you want to see what your precious traumatized sweetie actually does?" I took out my phone and linked it to the TV in the living room. I put up a camera after my controller went lost 4 weeks ago. Travis's face became white. He marched towards me, but his unexpected behavior drew my parents' attention. "What is going on, Travis?" Dad said. "Nothing. Every Sunday," I said. "When we're at church, Travis has been charging neighborhood kids $8 an hour to play my PS5. The footage began playing. Travis was collecting money from the 2 Miller brothers just across the corner. Mom's jaw dropped open. "I'm not done." I scanned through Travis's text messages. "Don't worry. My foster parents believe anything if I cry." Dad walked forward. "Travis, isn't it such a coincidence," I interrupted, "that the exact day these kids said they couldn't afford to pay him anymore, he demanded I sell the PlayStation 5 completely?" The room became quiet. Travis was about to weep. This time there were real tears. My folks were staring. The hush lasted as long as if the entire world had been paused. Travis's face kept changing emotions, as if he were scrolling between filters, looking for the one that would save him. First came bewilderment, then hurt, and finally that injured puppy face that typically worked with Mom. The TV screen behind us still displayed his text messages, including the one about my foster parents believing anything if he wept. Mom's gaze shifted between the screen and Travis, her mouth still wide as if she was unable to grasp what she was witnessing. Dad stood there with his arms crossed, the vein in his forehead beginning to show, like it did when he was very angry. Finally, Dad cleared his throat and pointed to the TV. "Travis, explain the money." His voice was soft yet strong, as if he was attempting to conceal something greater. Travis instantly stood up and put on a concerned expression. "I was creating a safe space for those kids whose parents couldn't afford gaming systems," he explained, looking directly at Mom. "You know how hard it is for poor families." Mom's shoulders sank slightly, and I could tell she was already buying it. "So you were aiding them?" she inquired, her voice gentle again. Travis nodded swiftly. "They needed somewhere to play where they wouldn't feel judged." While they argued about Travis's alleged charitable activities, I stepped over to the TV stand and disconnected my PS5. The power cord sprang out with a nice snap. Travis's gaze followed my movement, but when he began to speak, Dad raised his hand. "We need to pause everything and have a proper family discussion." I slipped the console under my arm and took out my phone, resetting all of my PlayStation passwords right in front of them. Travis made a step toward me, but Dad stopped him. "Give him space, Travis." Mom stared at all of us and said in her teacher voice that no one would be playing games until we resolved this as a family. The injustice of it seared in my breast, but I knew protesting would only make matters worse. I nodded and went up the stairs with my PS5. "This isn't over," Travis shouted after me. In my room, I quickly opened my laptop and began downloading everything. The video files were initially saved to Google Drive, then Dropbox, and finally OneDrive. My hands trembled slightly as I created folder after folder labeled with dates and descriptions. Travis's text screenshots now have their own folder. The footage of him collecting money received another. I even forwarded copies to Dad's email with the subject, "Evidence, do not delete." An hour later, Travis knocked on my door with the false soft knock he used while Mom was listening. "Can we talk?" he inquired through the door. I opened it but did not let him in. He was wearing his sorrowful expression again. I was actually monitoring those kids to make sure they played age-appropriate games. His voice sounded calm, as if he had practiced it. "I was planning to tell Mom and Dad about the money and donate it all to charity for underprivileged youth." I just gazed at him, and he shuffled uneasily. "You don't believe me," he stated. I continued gazing. "Fine, be that way," he said before walking away. Later that evening, I overheard Dad on the phone in his office. He was phoning the parents of the two Miller brothers from our block and inquired about Travis's gaming activities. His speech was professional, but I could detect discomfort underlying. I sat at the top of the steps, listening but unable to understand the replies. No response came that night, which made my stomach churn. At supper, Mom made no mention of the money or the exploitation. Instead, she complained about how I had invaded Travis's privacy by installing a concealed camera. "Privacy is sacred in this house," she explained, passing the mashed potatoes. "We don't spy on family members." I wanted to inform her about Travis's images of light beneath my door and recordings of my controller clicking. But instead I pushed food around my plate. Travis sat there, appearing victimized, and sighing loudly. Dad remained silent, chopping his chicken into ever smaller pieces. "You could have just talked to us," Mom said, "instead of this ambush." The term ambush made my jaw clench, but I continued eating in quiet. After supper, I returned to my room and texted my school friend about what had transpired. I needed someone outside this place to reassure me that I wasn't insane. Their answer was quick, with a flurry of startled emoticons followed by actual words about how twisted up the scenario was. "Travis is playing a very good game here, isn't he? Those cries over seeing all those other kids with bedrooms sound staged, especially when he's charging those same kids money to play the PS5, which he claims he can't stand to watch. They offered to let me stay at their apartment if things went worse." Just knowing I had somewhere to go made the walls feel less confining. The next morning, I awoke to my phone vibrating with alerts. Travis had commented on social media about being ambushed and deceived by family members who were supposed to assist one another during difficult times. The post has already received dozens of responses from students and members of Mom's reading club, all of whom offered their support and praised him for his strength. My stomach fell as I read through the answers, seeing him control the entire narrative before I could defend myself. I grabbed my backpack and proceeded to school, my stomach churning as I passed through the main door. Kids were already chatting and pointing, their gazes following me down the corridor. Someone had posted Travis's message in the group chat, so everyone knew something was going on at my place. I kept my head down and made it to first period, where my friend looked at me with pity and interest. The teacher began discussing the Revolutionary War, but I couldn't concentrate on anything but the buzzing phones around me. The second period had hardly begun when the office assistant knocked on the door and handed my instructor a pink slip with my name on it. The trek to the counselor's office seemed to take forever, with my sneakers squeaking on the glossy floor. Maya Collins was waiting for me with her door open, indicating toward the chair across from her desk. She closed the door and sat down, pushing a box of tissues toward me despite the fact that I was not sobbing. She claimed she heard there was something going on at home and wanted to check in. I began telling her everything, from the crack house narrative to the PS5 in the garage to the video I had shown my parents. She listened without interrupting, simply nodding and taking notes on her yellow notebook. When I was finished, she leaned back and assured me I had done nothing wrong by safeguarding my property and documenting the incident. She took out a folder and began laying up a plan for me to follow. Document everything, including dates and times. Set specific boundaries for what you will and will not discuss with Travis. Don't respond when he attempts to provoke you. Keep copies of everything in several locations, including the cloud drive she assisted me in setting up right there. For the first time in days, I felt in control of the situation. When I went home that evening, Dad was in my room, putting up the PlayStation 5 on my desk. He didn't say anything, save that it would be staying in my room from now on. There are no common areas at all. He plugged everything in, checked that everything was working, and then squeezed my shoulder before departing. It was hardly an apology, but the gesture was meaningful. I spent an hour sorting my games and configuring the system just how I wanted it. Travis arrived on my door at 8 o'clock that night, wearing a studied, sorrowful expression. He apologized for any misunderstanding and hoped we could share the game system like brothers should. I told him no thank you and began closing the door. He quickly raised his voice so that our parents could hear him say he attempted to make amends, but I refused to forgive him. Mom called to find out what was going on, and Travis said he had apologized. But I wouldn't take it. Travis gave me the quiet treatment for 3 days, which was really pleasant. Then, Saturday morning, someone knocked on our front door while I was having breakfast. Mom responded, and I heard Patricia Owen's voice inquiring about the money her boys had given Travis for 8 hours' work. Mom's face became absolutely white when she realized the neighbors were aware of the entire situation. Dad seemed glad to have someone else validate what I had been saying. Patricia was there with her arms crossed, stating her boys had paid a total of $60 and she wanted it back. I remained in the hallway, listening as Mom tried to explain. It was all a misunderstanding. Dad withdrew into his office and returned with his laptop, which displayed our home security system. He began reviewing the tape from all of the Sundays we'd attended to church, his expression becoming more serious with each video. There was obvious proof of children arriving and departing from our garage, with timestamps that matched exactly when we were at service. He turned the laptop toward Mom, showing her the kids who had entered our garage while we were gone. Mom kept looking for an answer, but she couldn't dispute with the video proof. That evening, we all gathered around the dining room table for a family meeting. Dad said Travis needed to repay the money, and we needed to set new limitations for the gaming system. Mom quickly shifted the conversation to whether I had violated Travis's privacy by filming him without permission. She went on to discuss the ethics of monitoring and how I had damaged the family's trust. I was too exhausted to protest anymore and simply sat there while she spoke. Travis sat there looking triumphant while Mom defended him. The next day, I went to the electronics store and purchased a tiny lockbox for my controllers and connections. I gave the combination to Dad but no one else, and I put it in my closet so I could lock everything away. Travis noticed me hauling it upstairs and labeled it hostile conduct. I merely shrugged and continued heading towards my room. That night, my phone vibrated with a lengthy text from Travis about how I was killing the family. He told me to erase all the recordings for everyone's sake and quit attempting to turn our parents against him. I did not answer, but I did take a screenshot of his message and saved it in my evidence folder, as Maya had instructed. When you examined it closely, the tampering was clear. Sandra Keller approached Mom as we were in the foyer after church service on Sunday. She inquired about all of the children she had observed entering and exiting our garage while walking her dog the previous week. Mom's cheeks flushed as she realized the entire church may know about this. I felt horrible watching her, ashamed, but also furious that public humiliation was more important to her than Travis's real actions. The next week, Elise Parker came up for Travis's routine social services check-in. She carried a big folder with Travis's name on it and a clipboard full of forms. Dad cleared his throat when she asked if there were any problems to address. He brought up the PS5 scenario, which made Travis' face become pale. I sat on the couch, watching Elise jot down everything Dad said regarding the garage rental plan and the money Travis had gathered from the neighborhood kids. Her pen ran quickly over the paper, and Travis kept attempting to interrupt, but she held out her hand to stop him. Mom sat there, uneasy, while Dad detailed how Travis had been manipulating the issue for months. Elise took out a separate paper and began drafting what she termed a behavioral contract. She outlined precise guidelines for respecting other people's property and not stealing money from youngsters. The bit about Travis needing to repay the $50 to each youngster was highlighted twice. Travis nodded while she was around, but I could see his jaw tightening. She made him sign the contract and handed copies to both of my parents. Mom hardly glanced at hers before folding it up. Travis began making excuses about not having any money as soon as Elise departed. Dad suggested he take a part-time work at the grocery shop, which was hiring. Travis placed his palm on his chest and stated that working would interfere with his trauma healing process. The excuses kept flowing, like a busted faucet that wouldn't stop leaking. Chloe texted me that afternoon, asking if I wanted to bring my PlayStation 5 to her place. Her parents had a beautiful basement with a big TV and invited me to come play whenever I wanted. It pained to have to remove my own belongings from my house, but the thought of not battling over it every day made the decision simpler. I put the system and all of the games into a duffel bag. Mrs. Reynolds lifted me up and helped me take everything inside. Their basement featured nice carpet and a sectional couch, which was far superior to our spider-infested garage. I linked everything up to their television, and Chloe's little brother was overjoyed to see me play. For the first time in months, I was able to enjoy gaming without fear of Travis's imminent tantrum. When I arrived home that evening, Travis was pacing the living room. He saw the PS5 was missing from my room and began ranting that I was concealing family property. He used the identical phrases, as if my gaming system belonged to everyone. He said I was denying him the opportunity to make atonement by sharing it with him. Mom questioned where it went, with a concerned expression on her face. When I informed them it was at a friend's house, Travis's face got scarlet. He accused me of hoarding resources and acting selfishly with things that should be shared. The next day, I returned home from school to discover my bedroom door open and my lockbox on my bed. Mom had gone through it while I was away, hunting for the PlayStation 5. She confronted me in the kitchen about lying and concealing information from the family. I took out my phone and showed her the text thread with Chloe from the day before, confirming that I had been open about relocating it. The fact that she searched through my private belongings without my permission did not appear to concern her at all. She just kept stressing that families shouldn't keep secrets from each other. Dad arrived home that night with his phone in hand, looking serious. The neighbor had eventually contacted him back, confirming that their children had given Travis $50 apiece over several weeks. When he showed Mom the text messages, she stopped talking for a moment. Travis instantly stated that the neighbors had exaggerated just once or twice. Dad opened his banking app and saw a deposit of $100 from 4 weeks ago that matched the timetable. Travis's tale continued shifting as Dad offered additional facts. Why did Travis believe that declaring it family property would work when everyone knew the PS5 belonged to his foster brother? The way he changes his tale every time fresh evidence appears makes me wonder how he recalls all of his numerous falsehoods. Mom said grown-ups would handle adult conversations and instructed me to go to my room. I sat at the top of the steps, listening to them speak in circles below. Travis constantly referring back to his trauma and how difficult his childhood was. Every time Dad sought to focus on the money, Mom softened and said, "Maybe we should focus on healing instead of punishment." Dad's voice sounded weary as he tried to redirect the subject back to the compensation Elise had requested. The meeting lasted almost an hour, and nothing was settled. The next day at school, I told Maya everything around lunchtime. She advised that I explore setting limits with Travis. We spent the remainder of lunch role-playing various situations in which Travis attempted to engage me with the PS5. She helped me practice reciting a short statement repeatedly. By the conclusion of lunch, I felt comfortable repeating my boundary declaration regardless of what Travis said. That evening, Travis began his lecture about forgiveness and moving on as a family. I looked him in the eye and calmly spoke my practice line about the console being at a friend's house and not discussing it further. He kept talking about mending and second chances, but I just repeated the statement once more. Then I rose up and left the room without looking back. Mom called after me for being nasty, but Dad thought I handled it nicely. 3 days had passed before I discovered my gaming headset was missing from my desk, where I usually kept it. I checked my entire room twice, below the bed and behind my dresser. When I confronted Travis about it over dinner, he simply shrugged and said, "Maybe I lost it somewhere." His voice had that faux innocent tone that made my stomach flip. Dad stared between us but said nothing. Mom switched the discussion to schoolwork. Without proof, all I could do was add the headset to my expanding list of lost items. The following morning, Dad had a family meeting in the kitchen before school. He took out a piece of paper with a timetable scribbled on it. The plan was straightforward. Travis and I would practically live like roommates who never interacted, with distinct mealtimes, TV schedules, and everything. Mom's face became tense as she read it. She kept screaming it would harm our fraternity, but Dad remained adamant. After a week of negotiating, she eventually consented. A magnet was used to attach the schedule to the fridge. 3 days later, Elise arrived for her follow-up appointment with a hefty folder of paperwork. She arranged them on the dining room table as if she were organizing a war. There were behavior records, boundary lists, and a payment schedule for Travis to repay his neighbors. Her voice became serious as she warned Mom that additional difficulties may entail Travis being relocated. Mom's hands shook as she signed the paperwork. That weekend I heard Travis stumble up the stairs at 2 a.m. His eyes were red and glassy as he walked by my door. The odor of marijuana followed him down the corridor. Dad wanted to drug test him straight away, but Mom started weeping because Travis was so stressed. She remarked that testing him would mean kicking him when he was down. I returned to my room and put in my earplugs. Dad's phone rang at supper on Monday afternoon, indicating a text message from Patricia. She stated that if she did not receive her money by Friday, she would take us to small claims court. Mom's fork dropped on her dish with a loud clatter. Her face became white as she asked what the neighbors would say. Travis went back into his victim mode, claiming that everyone was out to get him. His false tears streamed down his cheeks. Dad scratched his temples before standing up from the table. Thursday night, Dad drafted a check from our family funds to repay all of the neighbors Travis stole from, a total of $900, money that was intended to go toward our vacation. He promised Travis that he'd work it off with chores, but we all knew it wouldn't happen. The injustice made my chest feel crushed. I had to exit the room before saying anything I would regret. Travis phoned our aunt on Friday evening, when Mom was preparing dinner. I could hear him through the wall, wailing about how cruel everyone was to him. 15 minutes later, our aunt contacted Mom and screamed about causing harm to a foster child. Mom spent more than an hour attempting to explain and defend Travis. I heard her minimize everything, claiming it was all a mistake. She repeatedly apologized to our aunt for offending her. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Mom knocked on my door. She sat on my bed and asked if I could apologize to Travis for the camera situation. Her voice was quiet and exhausted. I told her I would not apologize for safeguarding my own belongings. She was disappointed but did not press it. Perhaps she was now realizing that forced apologies wouldn't solve the problem. The next day at school, Maya advised that I store my gaming supplies in a locker. I emphasized that a full console would not fit into those little metal cabinets. We sat in the cafe, contemplating alternative ways to keep my belongings secure. She claimed it was unfair that I had to hide my own stuff in my own home. We both decided that Chloe's house was still the best option for now. Her folks were cool with it. That afternoon I made the choice to keep the PlayStation 5 at Chloe's house permanently. I would only bring it home on exceptional occasions when Travis was away. Chloe's parents invited me to come over whenever I wanted to play. They even prepared a space in their basement just for my setup. It wasn't ideal, but at least I could play in peace. Chloe helped me put everything up, and we played for 3 hours straight. Her mother offered us refreshments and did not complain about the loudness once. Walking home that night I felt lighter knowing that my PlayStation 5 was secure. Travis couldn't take it, break it or deceive our parents anymore. The timetable Dad created was also effective. Travis and I seldom saw each other save for passing in the corridor. He began spending more time in his room or hanging out with his questionable acquaintances. Mom still seemed sorry over our broken brotherhood, but she stopped attempting to force us together. Even Dad appeared more peaceful now that the regular conflicts had subsided. The home seemed different, quieter, yet less tense. A week passed by with this strange quiet, and I was actually beginning to relax until I walked down to the basement to get my old PS4 controller, which I had left on the shelf. The gadget had been shattered to bits on the concrete floor, with the plastic case ripped open and buttons thrown all around. Travis was upstairs watching TV when I carried up the pieces, and he hardly looked up to inform me he had trodden on it in the dark. His mouth twitched into a little grin, indicating he had done it on purpose. But I merely snapped images of the broken controller and returned to my room. Dad got home from work and noticed the images on my phone while I was showing him something else. And, for once, Dad was angry with Travis rather than me. He gave Travis 2 options: pay me $50 for a new controller or perform additional duties around the house for the next month to work it off. Travis spent the next hour arguing about how unjust this was, how accidents happen, and how I should not have put it in the basement in the first place. But Dad did not move. Mom stayed on the couch the entire time, saying nothing, which seemed like progress, even if she kept giving Travis those sorrowful looks. Travis eventually went off to his room, slamming the door so violently that a painting fell off the corridor wall. That night, at 11 p.m., I heard yelling below, followed by a loud smash that shook my entire apartment. I sneaked to the top of the stairs and noticed a fist-sized hole in the hallway wall, with drywall dust all over the floor. Travis was sitting on the ground, with Mom holding him and caressing his back while he pretended to cry about how no one understood him and how the tasks were triggering his trauma. Dad stood there looking forlorn, and I could see he had given up on getting Travis do anything. The next morning, Dad got up early to fill the hole with spackle, but Travis slept in until noon. I spent most of the day in my room, happy for the lock I'd put myself after Travis kept barging in without knocking. Elise arrived on Tuesday after Mom contacted her about the wall incident and had a lengthy conversation with my dad in the living room. While Travis sulked in the kitchen, she determined he required anger management sessions 3 times a week, beginning right away, and he threw another rage about how treatment was making him worse, not better. The first appointment was on Wednesday, and he came back telling everyone that the therapist was an idiot who didn't comprehend true trauma. By the second appointment on Friday, the therapist had phoned my parents, concerned about Travis's reluctance to therapy, but they agreed to keep trying. Sunday we went to church as usual, and Sandra approached Dad afterward to tell him she had seen Travis using pot outside the grocery store on Thursday afternoon with 3 high school guys who were known troublemakers. When she informed him, Dad's face went utterly motionless, and I could see him finally realizing the Travis problem was much more than simply the PS5 predicament. On the way home, no one spoke, and Travis continued asking what Sandra wanted, but Dad refused to say. My parents sat us both together on Monday morning to go over new home rules, but they only applied to Travis. No phones after 10 p.m., no going out without informing them where you were going, no inviting people over without permission, and Mom would search his room every day for contraband. Travis raged about prejudice and how they treated him like a criminal, but the restrictions remained. Mom began her regular room inspections the same day and kept discovering things like empty beer cans and cigarette packs, which she discarded without saying anything. Travis's claim that he walked on it in the dark, despite the fact that the controller was plainly crushed on purpose, tells me all I need to know about what transpired in that basement. Mrs. Reynolds phoned me on Tuesday afternoon, anxious about keeping my PS5 at their home for an extended period of time due to liability concerns. She gave me 2 weeks to find another answer, and the continual need to safeguard my own stuff was wearing me down. I spent hours investigating storage spaces and safe deposit boxes, but they all required money that I did not have. Wednesday night, I seriously considered selling the PS5 to end this drama once and for all. Part of me knew it would mean letting Travis win, but I was so tired of battling for something I had paid for myself. Dad discovered me looking at resale prices online and sat next to me without saying anything for a long. Then he assured me he understood whatever decision I made, and that sometimes serenity was more important than being correct. Something about what he said inspired me to keep fighting for my property, since giving up seemed like betraying myself. Thursday passed without any serious events. However, on Friday afternoon, Dad instructed me not to play any games for the rest of the weekend in order to calm things down. I agreed, even though it wasn't fair, because I could tell he was attempting to handle an impossible situation, with Travis deteriorating by the day. Travis was listening from the doorway, and I noticed him smirking when Dad told me I couldn't game, as if he'd gained some kind of triumph. Saturday morning, I awoke to the sound of crashing coming from the garage and hurried outside to see Travis rummaging through boxes and old furniture in search of my PS5. He had convinced himself that I was concealing it there and was throwing things around, making a great mess. When he couldn't locate anything, he went directly to Elise, who was making a house inspection, and informed her I must have sold the PlayStation 5 and pocketed the entire profit for myself. She asked for proof of sale, or any evidence that I had sold it, but he obviously couldn't produce anything because that wasn't the case. That Sunday afternoon, Elise showed up unexpectedly for another house visit, and I felt this was my opportunity to straighten things up. I took out my phone and scrolled through all of my texts with Chloe, demonstrating how we'd planned for the PS5 to stay at her apartment temporarily. Then I showed her the images Chloe had provided me of the console safely stored in her room next to her desk. I opened my banking app and read through months of statements, which revealed no large deposits that would suggest I had sold anything. Elise made notes on her iPad while going over everything, and I saw her writing about a pattern of false allegations. Travis watched from the doorway, becoming increasingly enraged as everyone believed falsehoods about him, and went out to his room, slamming the door so hard that a picture fell off the wall. Elise attempted to talk to him about the false claims, but the moment she knocked on his door, he began hyperventilating and gasping as if he couldn't breathe. Mom raced over to assist, but Elise simply remained there, making notes about his behavior into her iPad rather than reacting to his performance. She informed Mom professionally that she needed to establish boundaries throughout the exam, and Mom backed away, puzzled. I observed from the kitchen doorway, as someone finally refused to fall for his theatrical play, and it was like witnessing a magic trick get uncovered. The following week, Dad shocked everyone by organizing an intake appointment for family therapy, which Mom grudgingly consented to when he reminded her of Elise's warning. Travis pretended not to care when they informed him, but later, I noticed him hunkered over his phone, Google stuff like, how to manipulate therapists and what to say in family therapy to win. He left his phone unsecured on the counter while he went to the restroom, so I quickly snapped pictures of his search history before he returned. At our first therapy appointment, the therapist was an elderly man who didn't respond to Travis's bewildered demeanor when he gave homework, which included having separate rooms in the house and recording reparation progress. Travis kept questioning why all of this was required and pretending as if he didn't understand, but the therapist simply repeated the tasks without responding to his deflections. The new house rule they made was that my PS5 had to be kept off-site, and Travis couldn't contact any neighborhood kids under the age of 16, which wasn't ideal but was legally documented. Mom signed the agreement as if someone had died, but Travis made a huge show of signing with dramatic hesitation and deep sighs. Travis breached the restriction after 3 days by messaging the Miller brothers about hanging together, and Dad really followed through by confiscating his phone for 10 days. Mom protested, claiming it was too harsh, but Dad reminded her of Elisa's warning that Travis would be relocated to a new placement if things didn't change. Travis became utterly silent and frigid after that, which was scarier than his typical theatrical performances because you had no idea what he was plotting. He used his laptop to vent on social media about his terrible home and how his foster family treated him like a prisoner. However, the comments section devolved into a scathing discussion. Kids at the school who knew the true situation began remarking on how he had been charging money for the PS5 and lying about everything. The public humiliation appeared to hurt him more than any other punishment we'd tried, as he removed the post within an hour, but screenshots were already being circulated in group conversations. Travis came into my room one evening while I was completing my schoolwork and made what appeared to be a sincere apology, claiming he was sorry for being tough. I thanked him but kept my distance and didn't say anything since I wasn't sure whether this was genuine or just another ruse to acquire something. He appeared wounded when I did not quickly forgive and trust him again. But after what had occurred, I couldn't afford to let my guard down. That weekend I packed up the PS5 and took it to Chloe's place for a gaming night with pals, and it felt great to play regularly without any fuss. We played for 3 hours straight without regard for loudness, time constraints, or someone having a tantrum over childhood trauma. I understood this could be the way things had to be going forward, and strangely, I was fine with keeping my gaming away from my house if it meant avoiding the regular battles. When Elise arrived for her monthly evaluation, she noticed that Travis was mostly complying with the new regulations but cautioned that any further concerns may result in his being sent to a different placement. Mom and Dad ultimately realized that this wasn't just about video games, but about Travis's whole habit of manipulating and lying to achieve what he wanted. Travis continued to play victim, but now more softly, as if he was testing boundaries to see what he could get away with before facing actual repercussions. The following 4 weeks passed slowly, with everyone treading carefully around one another. Travis had stopped doing large dramatic performances, but I'd find him eyeing me from doorways when he thought I wasn't looking. Mom and Dad kept the PS5 in Dad's office, so I could only play it on Saturday mornings before his weekend shift began. I'd get up at 6 a.m. and cycle 3 miles in the dark, simply to get 3 hours of gaming done before he wanted his desk back. Travis began spending more time in his room, but I could hear him on the phone late at night, discussing new prospects and better bargains. My parents appeared exhausted all the time now, as if they had aged 5 years in 1 month. Dad began securing his home office when he went for work, and Mom installed a padlock on the garage after Travis attempted to sell our old lawnmower to someone on Craigslist. I obtained a job bagging groceries at a grocery shop for 15 hours a week and began depositing every dollar into a savings account that my parents were unaware of. Since I was 16, the bank teller assisted me in setting it up without the necessity for a parent's signature. Every shift I worked, I estimated how many more bags of groceries I needed to cover the first month's rent and deposit for my own home. Travis attempted to follow me to work once, but my boss tossed him out for bothering customers about contributions for foster children. I concealed my work schedule and began taking alternate routes home, so he couldn't track my hours or calculate how much money I was earning. What an incredible ride. I'm intrigued what kinds of inquiries you'll end up asking on your own journeys. I cannot wait to do this again soon. Like the video, it is more helpful than you realize. My jobless family came screaming at my door, demanded money. My brother forced his way in, trashed my flat. I called police. Now they're in jail. I am a 25-year-old woman who lives with her parents. I have 2 siblings, Frank and Bella. As the oldest, I was the first to start work. For a long time, just my father and I worked to support our family. My mother was either sick or too tired to work. Over time, I've come to recognize that her situation is self-inflicted. She would rather spend the day sitting on the couch, watching TV and feasting, than working. I gave up on convincing her to start working a long time ago. My brother and sister started working soon after finishing school. Unfortunately, they were not able to keep their employment for long. My brother was a robber, and my sister blamed her lack of job on her mental health. The transient financial ease we had when they started working did not last. I ultimately had to work extra shifts at work, knowing I couldn't rely on them. I worked hard to advance in my firm. Now, I make more than most people my age. Many people admire my accomplishments, yet I feel like an imposter. Looking back, I realize I haven't done much for myself. 70% of my wages are spent on housing expenses, leaving me with only 30%. That sum barely covers my necessities. On top of that, there is usually an unexpected bill at the end of the month that I must pay. I work so hard that I rarely get home, and when I do, it is a nightmare. At least I'm compensated for my job, but no one pays me to clean the house. I need to clean, do laundry, wash the dishes, and make sure we have enough groceries. My mother and sister barely contribute. My mother spends the entire day watching television, whilst my sister isolates herself in her room and only leaves to hang out with her friends or get into trouble. I can't ask my father or brother for help because they follow traditional gender roles. This is the type of family I am from. Despite my disagreement with those values, I felt I had no choice because I was living in their house. Every time I tried to speak up, my mother ordered me to find my own space. She understands that I can't afford my own home while also supporting the family. She also believes my heart is too tender to allow children to fend for themselves. None of this is why I am writing this post. It's not even the main reason I'm frustrated. My unhappiness arises from the fact that my parents have once again shown that they value my brothers over me. It was my birthday 2 days ago. My gift? Body wash. Yes, body wash. You might think I'm ungrateful, but Bella had her birthday last month. She hosted a grandiose surprise party that we could not afford. I had to take on more consulting job to help pay for it. This came after my father stated that he had enough money to pay for the party, which I had initially declined. Following the party, he came me with a sob story about miscalculating expenses. He also told me that he had borrowed from dangerous individuals and was afraid they would hurt us. To safeguard my family, I decided to pay for the party. I was quite unhappy since they keep doing this. Whether it's a holiday or a birthday, they always prefer my brother's gifts before mine. This year my brother received a new gaming system as a gift, while my sister received a certificate to our city's most expensive spa. And me? I received body washes. After everything I've done for this family, is body wash all I deserve? I'm not sure why, but this time I felt offended. Every time they did this, I discovered a way to get past it. I convinced myself they didn't mean it, that they loved and valued me. However, I believe it's time to stop telling myself lies. That body wash was the last straw. I exploded after receiving it. I was unable to control myself. I felt a huge knot in my throat and my rage overpowered me. I asked them why I couldn't celebrate like Bella and Frank. All I got was body wash, not even a delicious cake. My father became upset and demanded why I was being so disrespectful when I knew their financial situation. At that point, I started giggling and wondered how he could say that with a straight face. He was the one who went into debt to make sure Bella had a great birthday, but he couldn't afford more than $20 for me. I became tired of being treated differently. At that point, I had to ask if I was adopted. Is this why they treated me like a stranger? I work hard at my job, come home and care for everyone, and all I get is body wash. They must be kidding. At this time, my mother erupted into tears, saying how much she despised my small outbursts. So it's okay for her to have feelings, but displaying mine is insulting to the family? That is exactly how I took her comment. She experiences hundreds of different emotions during the day, and we are expected to tolerate them. But if I become enraged over something valid, I am considered theatrical. Fine. I decided to stop arguing and went to my room. When they called, I claimed to be asleep. I sat there the whole time, just thinking. I was very unhappy. Even though I keep myself occupied all the time, I can't fall asleep. My thoughts revolve around how sad I feel. Most people my age are buying their first car, getting married, or buying a house. I see some of them doing just that at work, despite the fact that they make less than me. I'm envious. Despite being ahead at work, I am far behind in life. I don't have an identity or a purpose in this world. My sole aim is to serve these ungrateful individuals. Now that I think about it, how did I allow them to abuse me like this? They had been taking advantage of me for so long that I had no idea. My feelings on this have become very clear as a result of the incident involving my birthday gift. Now I realize that I don't want things to stay this way forever. Something needs to change. I feel like I'm not doing anything with my life, and I'd like to know what I can do to change that, to find my own purpose. Update 1: I did it. I moved out 2 months after my original post. I can't believe I moved out just 2 months after the birthday incident. My apartment is small and sparsely decorated, but it's mine. Do you want to know what I did immediately after I completed moving? I slept in my bed for hours, with no one calling to address a simple issue. It was a strange sensation. I had no clue lying in bed could be so therapeutic. You're probably wondering how I moved. especially with my strict family. It wasn't easy, but I finished it. First, I followed their advice and started setting boundaries. I paid only the bare minimum for home expenditures and saved the rest. I also worked additional shifts at work and saved money. When my parents asked about the money, I told them that it will be included in my year-end bonus. It was challenging, but after I had enough for the deposit, I told them to go to hell and went into my new apartment. Once I had decided which apartment to rent, I informed my parents that I was going. The chat wasn't nice. They were outraged and asked if living with them was indeed that bad. I told them that it was not about them, but about me. I was getting older and needed to gain some freedom. I would be unable to accomplish it if I continued to live with them. Besides, Mom had always suggested that I should acquire my own place. Of course, my mother was offended by my response and called it snarky. She pretended to want only the best for me, but I scoffed everything she said. I understood I couldn't win the fight, so I apologized and moved on. My family was adamantly opposed to my wish to relocate, but there was nothing they could do. I had already signed my lease and was ready to depart. In protest, none of them helped me pack. I had to ask a couple of co-workers for help. Janet and Lisa, two acquaintances from different divisions at work, were the only ones who knew about my situation at home. When I told them I was relocating, they jumped with joy. When I asked for assistance with the move, they were delighted to help. We finished transferring everything a few days ago, and now I'm in my almost empty flat. I don't have much yet, but I am content. I can't wait to begin living independently. Update 2. I've been living in my apartment for over a month. It has been a difficult month, but I am happier than ever, or was until a few hours ago. Let me quickly recap what has happened over the last month. I've been furnishing my flat and even hosted a housewarming party. Also, now that I have my evenings open, I've started going out with friends and meeting new people through them. It's fantastic to have a social life after being without one for so long. Honestly, I believe I am now living for myself. Aside from building a social life, I've been dating someone Lisa introduced me to. In the past, I never went out with anyone since I didn't have time. My family was constantly disturbing my plans with an emergency, but now that I live farther away, they can't do so. You're probably wondering how my relationship with my family has been over the past month. Actually, none of them had contacted me at all during this time. They have been abnormally silent, which has been perplexing at times. I considered messaging them, but then I stopped myself. I feel like I'm generally the one that breaks the ice and apologizes when we argue. I don't want to be that way anymore. I wanted to be treated with the same respect as any other member of the family, therefore I chose not to contact them. For a while I thought our relationship was over. That is, until my mother reached me this afternoon when I was working. I was surprised to see her name on the screen, but I did answer. As soon as I picked up, she inquired, "Where's the check?" At first I was bewildered since I had no idea what check she was talking about. Had she forgotten that I didn't live with them anymore? What were her ideas exactly? She questioned how I expected them to function without my guidance. I informed her that she had 2 healthy, capable children who could help with the bills. They had a month to look for work. What did they do throughout that time? She then asked how I could be so thoughtless of my siblings' plight. So I questioned her. How could I have pity for a criminal and a lazy girl? They harmed their own job prospects. Couldn't they learn from me and persevere? I informed my mother that I was not going to send anything, and that they should make their own preparations. Then I hung up. She called me several more times, but I didn't answer. Later, my father called and attempted to chastise me, but I hung up. I couldn't believe what I'd accomplished. I had never cut someone off while they were speaking before. But, to be honest, the previous month has been really peaceful, and reconnecting with them has reminded me of how turbulent my life used to be. I don't think I want to disturb my peace by bringing them back into my life. I wish they had stayed silent. They should have cut me off and left me alone, because I was never a member of the family. I now realize that they only wanted me for as long as I could provide for them. I was living an unsustainable lifestyle since I was always available to help others. But now that's over. I have reached my limit. It's time for me to focus on myself. I should have done this long ago. They've tried to make me feel awful, but it's not working. I believe it's because I've become immune to it. Update 3. I honestly don't know what's happening with my family. I cannot believe I am related to such odd people. I knew they were willing to go to lengths to attain their objectives, but this is too much. I will not be patient with them after this. They are about to see a side of me they did not know existed. It had been 2 days since my relatives started nagging me for money. I have constantly told them that I will not give them anything. They need to design their own strategy. How can they expect me to help them if they can't pay their bills? I already have my own expenditures. It is completely reckless and irrational. I've been ignoring them for the past 24 hours, focusing on buying more furniture for my flat. It's finally starting to look like a house, and I'm very proud of myself. I can't believe I now have goods of my own. Unfortunately, I can't really appreciate their success because they've been so annoying. I've ignored them the whole time, which is probably why they decided to come to my house. Yes, they visited my flat last night while I was hosting a small gathering. Here's what occurred. Yesterday was a Friday night and several of my friends wanted to go out, but I was too tired. Lisa and Janet agreed, so we scheduled a book and wine night at my apartment. 2 more girls joined us, and we were having a great time until there was a disturbance outside the door. I live in a quiet apartment complex, so this was concerning. We tried to ignore it, but it grew louder and eventually reached my door. When I opened it, my sister, father, and brother were arguing with the building's manager. They demanded to be allowed into my apartment because they were family. I couldn't believe what I saw. I told the manager I knew them, but they weren't welcome. My father appeared hurt and said he only wanted to talk. I asked him to check the time, which was 10 p.m. I told them that if they wanted to see me, they could have called ahead. Also, how did they learn where I lived? That's when my sister stepped in, claiming she heard from a friend who saw me at the complex. Then she looked around and realized I was living large. She asked why she couldn't live with me. I looked at her as if she were insane. Why would I want to live with someone who was so unproductive? I'd need to feed her and clean up after her. I haven't forgotten the dynamics of the past few years. I told them to leave because they were not welcome, especially at that hour. My father refused, saying they wouldn't leave until I spoke with them. I told him I wasn't interested in talking, especially since I had guests. Then my brother started yelling at the top of his lungs, addressing my friends and calling me a useless sister. He then forced his way into my flat and started verbally assaulting me. Between him, my sister, and my father, I felt completely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, my friends sat stunned, watching this horrific show. Things only got worse. My father and brother began rifling through my belongings and turning them upside down. I cried because I saw them treat my possessions so disrespectfully. I implored them to stop, but they did not listen. They said I was to blame and demanded a check. That is, until security arrived. It turned out that Janet had gone to contact security as soon as my father and brother began disrupting the calm. When security arrived, my father and brother refused to go and attempted to resist. That was a major mistake, since the uproar became so loud that they had to call the cops. My father and brother are currently in jail for trespassing in my flat and disrupting the peace. They will not be released until Monday, and I have already filed charges. I am bringing them to court over this. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. This marks the end. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them drag me farther into their mess. Update 4. I wanted to post an update sooner because it has been 4 months, but I chose to wait until everything was resolved. Now that the trial has ended, I can finally tell you everything. I think many of you will be relieved to know that my family received what they deserved. Starting with my brother. The judge was harsh on him because he had previously shoplifted and is a repeat offender. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Unfortunately, this will remain on his record, making it even more difficult for him to establish a future for himself. But honestly, given the way he's been spending his life, he had little chance. I'm hoping that his time in jail will straighten him out and help him set priorities. I've seen folks considerably younger than him who have significantly more structured lives. My father had to pay a fee to the court and is currently on probation. If he even receives a traffic ticket, he's done. He needs to be really cautious for a time, otherwise he'll wind up in jail. Both the judge and the city take these transgressions very seriously, which is why they have met with severe punishments. Now, about my mother. Years of gluttony and idleness have now caught up with her. She is at high risk of heart disease due to her poor lifestyle. Because of how quickly her health is deteriorating, doctors estimate she has less than 2 years if she does not make radical adjustments. Knowing her, she probably doesn't care, because she believes she will live forever. I tried for years to convince her to eat healthier, but she never listened, so I gave up. If her high cholesterol does not kill her, my sister most likely will. Speaking of my sister, she's been the talk of the town lately, and not for the right reasons. Since money has been tight and no one is funding her lifestyle anymore, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She somehow became acquainted with the wrong crowd, girls who were rumored to be selling certain items on the street corner. It is both forbidden and highly hazardous. I heard about a week ago that she had been imprisoned for doing something suspicious. I wouldn't be surprised if she ends up in a physically risky scenario as a result of her chosen route. People have urged me to speak with her, but she chose this life. Honestly, she probably thinks I'm stupid for working an honest job. No insult to anyone in that field, but I've observed what some of these girls go through. There is no happy ending in store for her, only substance usage, extra jail term, and risky situations. My mother has fallen numerous times as a result of the stress that Bella has caused, but Bella still lives with our parents. So they are encouraging her actions by allowing her to be there. Even if she is producing money, she is obviously not spending it correctly or meeting her responsibilities. You are obviously wondering how I know all this. I found out from a reputable source. My parents are now getting food stamps, and my father's working hours have been lowered. He spends much of his time at home with my mother and Bella. I can only imagine how hungry everyone must be in that house right now. But it isn't only for them. In addition, they must reimburse me for the harm they caused to my apartment. I was able to recover the stuff they damaged, but they still have to pay the judge's ruling. I feel sad for them, but not enough to intervene and assist. It's what it is. They made their judgments, and now they had to deal with the consequences. Update 5. I have an update on several recent occurrences, and the truth is that my family is getting further into the problems that, as I repeatedly say, they created for themselves. They are the ones who attempt to dig themselves out of a hole by digging deeper. I'm not sure if there is a path back for them, but I know it is not my responsibility to get them out of the holes they've dug themselves. And they keep going deeper. To begin with, my father, who was supposed to pay for the damage he and my brother caused in my apartment, did not do so. Many of the comments I received in my previous update predicted this outcome, and they were right. The worst part is that this time, he didn't even attempt. He made no effort to indicate his readiness to follow the judge's instructions. However, the judge was accurate in warning that any failure would result in his return to prison. A sneeze may send him in jail, which is exactly what happened. It wasn't a true sneeze, but his failure to pay the required amount resulted in a trip to jail. I found out a few days ago that he is currently serving time there. The absurdity of the situation is that my father was, theoretically, the only one working in that house. I don't know how my mother will cope without him now that he's in prison. When I last spoke with someone close to the family, they stated there was almost no food in the home. Given my mother's health difficulties, this is really concerning. But, to be honest, all I feel is a cold distance from the entire situation. For years I was the one who kept that house afloat, but they emotionally and financially abused me. They are now facing the consequences of their own folly. Furthermore, my mother is alone in the house, not only because my father is in jail, but also because my brother and sister are now incarcerated. My brother had already been in jail for a while, as you may recall, but my sister has now joined him. Yes, her business venture ended as planned. She was arrested. Everyone saw it coming, except her. Her condition deteriorated when she began using in addition to selling, making her even more susceptible and without judgment. An undercover officer caught her in the act, putting a halt to her attempts to live an unsustainable lifestyle. She's currently awaiting trial, but I doubt she'll come away unhurt. The worst part is that she can't afford professional representation, so she's defended by a public defender. I do not mean to be harsh, but I don't see much of a chance for her. As for my mother, I'm not sure what will happen to her life now. She is staying in a house that once housed 5 people but is now absolutely empty. My father is in prison, my sister is facing a trial, and my brother has already served time. The house is empty, and the saddest part is that she has no one to care for her. For years, she relied solely on others to bring her money and food. She can barely leave the house anymore due to her health problems. I'm not sure how she will live. I know they get food stamps, but that isn't enough to live on. In summary, my family has completely collapsed. All I have left is my tranquility, and while this may sound harsh, I do not regret removing myself. Update 6. I feel terrible about having to deliver bad news, but it's no longer my fault. It's my family's. Despite the fact that everything is happening in slow motion, I can't help but be grateful that I am not intimately involved in this calamity. To begin, I've finally retrieved my money. It was not an easy process, and as expected, my father did not have enough money to pay me. The only reason Dad did it was because my mother had to take out a loan to get him out of jail. The fact that my father was in jail for contempt made things considerably more difficult, but she eventually collected the money after much effort. Of course, it was not her idea, but rather my mother's desperate attempt to get my father out of jail. My father's release from jail is arguably the only positive side of this situation. During this time, my mother was staying with a relative while working to fix my father's legal troubles. She left the house for an extended period of time, and as one would expect, it was abandoned. Now, the neighborhood we lived in was never ideal, especially for leaving a property alone. Apparently, it has been vandalized and completely looted. The most concerning aspect is that, according to what I've been told, there are people living there now, people who, from what I understand, may have previously been clients of my sister. The fact that people are squatting in the house is simply the start of the problem. Still, even if my parents are able to remove them, which I doubt will be easy, I'm not sure what remains as a house. It upsets me to think about the status of the place I once called home, especially given I spent so much time and effort maintaining it while I was still living there. However, at the end of the day, it is no longer my home. It is not in my name, and it is not my obligation to fix it. My parents will have to handle this on their own. My siblings continue to fulfill their sentences. There have been very few updates on that front. What amazes me the most about this is how swiftly things deteriorated after my departure. It's as if my departure was the final nail in the coffin of a situation that was already deteriorating from within. Thank you for reading. If you have not already subscribed, please do so and click the notification bell to stay up to date on the latest shocking real-life tales. My sister applauded when Dad slapped me at a party of 30. That night, I made a call that destroyed them all. Now they're begging. My name is Claire. I'm 32, and I've learned the hard way that blood does not always imply loyalty. However, sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing people to face the consequences of their own acts. It all started with what was supposed to be a celebration. My younger sister, Maris, had recently purchased her first home with her husband, Henry, and they were hosting a housewarming celebration. Maris, 29, had always been the golden child, marrying young, having 2 children by the age of 25, and convincing our parents that she could do no wrong despite a series of terrible financial mistakes. I, on the other hand, was the family's disappointment. Never mind that I had a great profession as a financial consultant, owned my own home, and worked tirelessly to purchase a lovely holiday property in the mountains. My parents, Gerald and Sophia, considered my life useless because I did not have children. They didn't care if I was completely content with my dog Finn, or that I was independent. When I arrived, the celebration was already in full gear, with a great bottle of wine and a gift card to Maris's new place. There were about 30 individuals there, including family, friends, and neighbors. Maris was delighted to see me, giving me a big embrace and thanking me for coming. For a minute, I believed things were improving between us. I should have known better. About an hour into the celebration, Maris tapped her wine glass to draw everyone's attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she said, her voice carrying the artificial sweetness I'd grown to recognize over the years. "Henry and I are so grateful for all the support as we start this new chapter." Then her tone changed. "Actually, there's something else I wanted to discuss while we're all here together." She stared directly at me, and my stomach dropped. "Claire, could you come over here for a minute?" The crowd dispersed as I made my way to where Maris was standing. My parents flanked her on either side, and the expressions on their faces told me this wasn't going to end well. The discussions around us dwindled as more people turned to watch. "Claire," Maris said, her voice now audible to everyone. "You know how tight money has been for Henry and me, especially with the kids and the new mortgage." I nodded nervously, unsure where this was going but experiencing a sinking sensation. "Well, we've been talking as a family," she said as she gazed at our parents. "And we think it would be really generous of you to let us use your vacation cabin. You know, since you barely use it. And we could really make some memories there with the kids." The way she phrased it sounded like a done deal, as if I had already agreed. But I hadn't. In fact, this was the first time I'd heard about it. "Maris, Mama interjected, walking forward with that smile that never left her eyes. "We think you should just give it to Maris and Henry. It would be the family thing to do." The room had become utterly silent. I could feel 30 pairs of eyes on me, waiting for a reaction. My cheeks were flushed with embarrassment and rage. "You want me to give away my vacation home? It's not like you're using it for its intended purpose," Dad said, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he'd used to silence my opinions all his life. "Vacation homes are for families. You just go up there alone with that dog of yours." "That dog has a name," I remarked with a high voice. "And yes, I go there to relax and recharge. It's my property that I worked hard to afford." Maris laughed. But it wasn't pleasant. "Come on, Claire. Don't be selfish. Think about my kids, your niece and nephew. They deserve to have those experiences. They can have experiences at the dozens of other vacation rentals available," I said, attempting to maintain my composure despite the rage swelling inside me. "I'm not giving away my property." Mom's disguise slipped entirely. "You don't even have kids," she exclaimed, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "What do you need a family vacation home for? Just keep walking with your dog and stop being so damn selfish." The cruelty in her voice astounded me. These were the folks who were meant to love and support me, and here they were, publicly humiliating me for not having children, which wasn't exactly my choice. I had been struggling with infertility for years, which they were aware of, yet seemed unconcerned about. Dad took a step forward, his face flushed with rage. "Your sister has kids, real responsibilities. You're just a barren waste, taking up space and resources that could benefit actual family members." The term desolate struck me as a bodily blow. I'd heard Dad make terrible words before, but never this publicly or aggressively. The crowd shuffled uncomfortably, but no one spoke anything. Nobody defended me. Maris was virtually beaming with malicious joy. "About time the family disappointment paid up," she cackled. "Maybe this will finally make you useful for something." I stood there, shaking with wrath and shame, as my own family tore me apart in front of a crowded gathering. Some looked away sheepishly, while others watched with sick interest. But no one came forward to defend me. "I said no," I managed to say through tight teeth. "It's my property, and I'm not giving it away." That was when Dad completely lost it. His hand shot up quickly, connecting with my cheek in a vicious backhand that knocked me backward. The sound of the smack reverberated across the suddenly silent room. And then, to my complete horror, people began clapping. Not everyone. Some looked astonished and uncomfortable, but there were enough individuals to fill the room with applause. Maris was beaming, like if she had just won an award. Mom nodded in approval. Dad fixed his shirt as if he'd just finished something essential. I stood there, fingers pressed against my burning cheek, staring at the individuals who were supposed to be my family. The treachery went deeper than any physical agony ever could. "Fine," I replied calmly, my voice dead calm. "I'll remember this." I went out without saying anything, leaving behind the gift I had brought and any illusions I had about my family's unconditional devotion. The drive home was a haze. Finn greeted me at the door with his usual excitement, and I buried my face in his fur, finally allowing the tears to fall. My cheek was swollen, my heart was torn, and I felt more alone than I ever had before. But when the initial shock faded, something else began to take its place. Cold, calculated anger. I had always been the responsible member of the family. While Maris made one bad financial decision after another, I had been quietly helping out. I co-signed her first auto loan when her credit was bad. I had lent her money for emergencies more times than I could remember. I'd even contributed to a down payment on the house we just celebrated, though she'd sworn me to secrecy about it. More importantly, I had been managing our parents' funds for the last 5 years. Dad had asked me to take over when Mom began to exhibit early signs of memory loss, and he was straining to keep track of things. I had sorted their finances, set up their retirement accounts, handled their taxes, and ensured that all of their payments were paid automatically. Mom's condition had deteriorated over the years, but she still had many good days, and she understood and appreciated my assistance with their finances. They absolutely trusted me with their financial lives. Maris had no idea I was involved. But here's the thing. As a financial advisor, you learn that money equals power. And power may be withdrawn just as easily as it is granted. That night, I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop and began making calls. The first call went to the bank that held Maris's mortgage, which I helped her qualify for by co-signing and paying a portion of the down payment. I told the loan officer that, due to recent family circumstances involving financial abuse and threats, I was concerned about my continued duty as a co-signer and needed to know my options. "I understand your concerns, Miss Thompson," the officer responded. "While you can't simply remove yourself as a co-signer, you can formally request that we re-evaluate the loan based on changed circumstances. Given what you're describing, we would need to reassess whether the primary borrowers can qualify for the loan independently. And what happens if they can't re-qualify?" I was thinking about it. "We would work with them on modification options, but if no suitable arrangement can be reached, the loan could potentially be called in." "Perfect." The second call was to resign my power of attorney over my parents' finances. I diligently chronicled everything over the years. And what I learned was really unsettling. Dad had been surreptitiously sending money to Maris for years, money that was supposed to be part of Mom's care fund for her deteriorating memory. The loans he gave Maris were never repaid, totaling more than $30,000. Most alarming, he was opening credit accounts in Mom's name without her knowledge or consent. Given her worsening cognitive state, I scrupulously documented everything. Screenshots, bank statements, email chains, that I legally got while serving as their official financial agent before resigning. The third call went to Adult Protective Services. I'd like to report suspected financial elder abuse, I informed the intake staff. I have documentation of someone systematically taking money from an elderly woman with memory issues, including using her identity to open credit accounts. I provided them with everything. Bank statements indicating unlawful transfers, evidence of the credit applications Dad had filled out with Mom's details, and evidence that Mom's cognitive impairment made her susceptible to this type of manipulation. This is very serious, the worker informed me. We'll need to start an investigation immediately. In the meantime, we'll need to freeze the accounts in question to prevent further exploitation. The fourth call went to Maris's employment. Maris worked as a bookkeeper for a small family firm, and I happened to know that her supervisor, Ms. Benton, was quite concerned about her staff financial integrity. A short check of public records revealed that Maris had multiple recent judgments against her for outstanding debts, which had not been reported during her employment. I did not make any charges. I simply asked Ms. Benton whether she was aware that Maris had hidden financial judgments that could influence her bonding insurance, which was required for her role managing the company's finances. The fifth call went to the IRS. Dad's loans to Maris, which were never repaid and totaled more than $30,000, are technically deemed taxable income because forgiven loans exceed a particular threshold. And if Maris had accepted these funds without declaring them, it would be tax evasion. I gave the IRS complete evidence of every transfer, loan, and gift that exceeded the annual limit, all of which I received legally through my duty as Mom and Dad's financial agent. But I wasn't finished yet. The sixth call went to Child Protective Services. Now, let me be clear. I would never make fraudulent claims about child welfare. But I didn't have to. Maris's social media was a goldmine of concerning information that she'd posted herself, including photos of her children in situations that CPS would undoubtedly want to investigate, posts about leaving the kids alone while she went out, and comments about using medications to help the kids sleep so she could have adult time. All information is publicly available. All screenshots are documented. All of this is actually disturbing for children's welfare. I just gathered everything and sent it along with a request for a wellness check. Henry's boss was the last person I called. Henry worked in construction, and his employer had very strong standards about domestic abuse, including insurance liability and job site safety. The images I'd taken of my damaged face, together with witness testimony from some of the more decent people at the party who were shocked by Dad's actions, provided a clear picture of a family dealing with major violence issues. I never accused Henry of anything. I merely provided facts on the family atmosphere and let the firm decide whether it fit their employment standards. Then I sat back, waiting. It did not take long. 3 days later, Maris called me and screamed. "What did you do?" she screamed into her phone. "The bank is calling our loan. They want the full balance in 30 days or they're starting foreclosure." I removed myself as a co-signer, I explained quietly. "It's my legal right." "You can't do this. We'll lose the house." "You should have thought about that before you decided to publicly humiliate me and demand my property." "Claire, please." Her voice changed to a phony tenderness. "I'm sorry about the party. Things got heated. But you can't punish my kids for... your kids. The ones you were so concerned about having vacation memories with? Maybe they should ask their grandfather where all their grandmother's medical money went." The line became quiet. "What are you talking about?" Maris inquired, but her tone shifted. She knew. "Adult Protective Services is very interested in Dad's financial activities," I remarked with a smile. "Apparently stealing from a dementia patient is a serious crime. Who knew?" The second domino dropped the following day, when Dad called. "Claire, we need to talk," he said, trying to appear authoritative, but with a palpable sense of panic. "There are people asking questions about Mom's accounts." "I'm sure there are," I said. I turned over all the financial records to the appropriate authorities. "You had no right." "I had every right. You gave me power of attorney, remember? That means I'm legally obligated to protect mom's interests. Funny how that works. Those were family loans. Those were thefts from a vulnerable adult, I explained. The police seemed very interested in the fact that you opened credit cards in mom's name without her knowledge. The hush lasted for quite some time. What do you want? He finally inquired. I want you to face the consequences of your actions, I told you. Just like you made me do at Maris's party. The third domino provided the most satisfaction. Maris lost her position after Ms. Benton found not only the concealed financial judgments, but also some innovative bookkeeping Maris had been using to cover her own money problems. Borrowing from petty cash with the aim to repay it later is still considered stealing, even if you intend to replace it. The fourth domino fell when the IRS audit discovered that Maris had not disclosed over $40,000 in forgiven loans and gifts over the previous 3 years. The penalties and overdue taxes were considerable, and wage garnishment occurred immediately. The fifth domino fell when CPS conducted a wellness check and discovered conditions troubling enough to warrant parenting classes and regular check-ins. Nothing that put the kids in immediate danger, but enough to make Maris and Henry extremely stressed. Henry lost his job because his company determined that his involvement in domestic violence incidents posed an unacceptable level of liability risk. However, the turmoil had only just begun. About 2 weeks after Henry lost his job, I received a call from my cousin Nina, Maris's dearest friend since childhood. Nina had attended the celebration but had not participated in the applause. In truth, she had been horrified the whole time. Claire, I need to tell you something, Nina began, her voice quivering. I should have said this weeks ago, but I was scared. What happened at Maris's party? It wasn't spontaneous. My blood became chilly. What do you mean? They planned it, she explained. I overheard Maris, your mom and your dad talking before the celebration started, and Maris mentioned that she had been working on getting your cabin for months. She said you were too self-centered to give it up willingly, so they had to exert familial pressure in front of witnesses. You couldn't back down. The treachery wound deeper than I had anticipated. They intended to ambush me. Maris clearly stated that if they did it publicly, I would be too embarrassed to decline. She laughed about it, Claire, Nina explained. She said something about how you always crumble under public pressure and that you'd probably just hand over the keys to avoid more confrontation. I felt nauseous. The entire event had been a premeditated attack intended to take advantage of my perceived weakness. They had brought 30 people to watch what they expected to be my humiliation and capitulation. There's more, Nina added. After you left, Maris boasted about how she'd been warming you up for months with sob stories about money problems. She claimed she had been documenting every time you supported her financially, so she could use it as proof that you always cave when family members need assistance. Evidence for what? She intended to take you to court if public shame did not succeed. She had this belief that because you had been financially supporting her for years, you owed it to your family to continue. She thought she could persuade a judge to order you to sign over the cabin as part of a family support agreement. The audacity was amazing. Maris had been preparing a court case to seize my possessions, using my generosity as leverage. Why are you telling me this now? I requested an explanation. Nina was silent for a moment. Because Maris phoned me yesterday. She is desperate, Claire. She is considering suing you for purposely wrecking her family. She believes that everything is happening because you are vengeful, not because she and your parents violated the law. I am not sure what she is planning, but she has been inquiring about your income, employment, and where you spend your time. She's also been attempting to persuade mutual friends to join sides, telling them that you're a heartless monster who is destroying innocent children out of vengeance. This was exactly what Maris would do. Play the victim while refusing to take responsibility for her actions. But now I had advance notice, and I plan to utilize it. Nina, I need you to do something for me, I told you. If Maris contacts you again, I want you to record the conversation. Can you do that? I guess so, but why? Because Maris is about to learn that I'm much better at this game than she ever realized. After hanging up with Nina, I spent the evening further exploring Maris's social media sites. What I discovered was a treasure trove of incriminating evidence that depicted a completely different picture than the sob story she'd been telling everyone. While she was complaining about poverty to me and our parents, she was sharing pictures of costly restaurants, new clothes, and weekend getaways. The timestamps indicated that these posts were from the same periods that she had been asking me for emergency loans. She'd been lying about her financial circumstances to get sympathy and money from family members. More problematic were the posts in which she boasted about manipulating the system and taking advantage of people who have more money than sense. She'd actually uploaded copies of text messages in which she mocked me for being such a fool for assisting her financially. I took screenshots of everything and prepared a complete file. Then I did something unfathomable to me 6 months ago. I started my own social media campaign. I published a lengthy post about what happened at Maris's party, complete with images of my damaged face and testimonials from the few nice people who observed the assault. I didn't need to embellish or lie. The reality was bad enough. But I also added Maris's own posts, which showed her luxurious lifestyle while professing financial difficulty, as well as her disparaging comments about people who aided her, all of which were previously public on her social media accounts. I let her own words reveal her personality. The post went viral in our social circles. The response was astounding. Dozens more individuals responded with their own experiences of Maris's deceptive behavior, unpaid bills, and history of leveraging family strife to get her way. Several guests stated that they felt uncomfortable during the gathering, but didn't know how to intervene. More importantly, Maris's present neighbors and Henry's old co-workers began discussing their own experiences. Maris had been borrowing money from neighbors with sob stories about medical problems and automotive troubles, which she had been telling me. She owed money all around town and was lying about why. The social media campaign also served another purpose. It established a public record of Maris's behavior, which she would find difficult to contest if she attempted to sue me. Her own statements, posts, and established habit of manipulation. Maris visited my workplace 3 days after my post went up. I was in a meeting with a client when my assistant knocked on the door. "I'm sorry to interrupt, Miss Thompson, but there's a woman here who says she's your sister. She's quite upset." Maris was pacing in the foyer, gesticulating frantically at my secretary as I watched through the glass wall of my office. She looked even worse than she did at my house, unkempt, angry, and desperate. "Please reschedule my 3 p.m. appointment," I informed my customer. "I have a family emergency to deal with." Maris started screaming the moment I arrived into the lobby. "How dare you post that garbage about me online? You're destroying my reputation." "Your reputation destroyed itself," I said quietly, well knowing that my colleagues were watching. I simply shared the truth about what happened. "You posted private conversations. That's illegal." "I posted conversations you shared publicly on your own social media," I quickly clarified. "Nothing I shared was private." Maris's face was flushed with wrath. "You're vindictive, and everyone can see it now." "Nobody believes your victim. The comments on my post suggest otherwise," I stated. "In fact, quite a few people have reached out to share their own experiences with your behavior. You turned people against me." "I didn't have to turn anyone against you, Maris. Your actions did that all by themselves." That's when she made a crucial error. Maris took out her phone and began recording, apparently intending to catch me saying something she could use against me. "Say that again," she demanded, raising the phone. "Tell everyone how you systematically destroyed an innocent family because you're a bitter, childless woman who can't stand to see other people happy." I smiled straight into her camera. "I stopped assisting financial abuse and reported criminal activities to the proper authorities. If you wish to record this talk, let's make sure we have the facts straight." I took out my own phone and began recording. "Maris, are you denying that you and our parents plan to publicly pressure me into giving you my property? That's not. Are you denying that Dad has been stealing money from Mom's medical fund to give to you? He was helping family. Are you denying that you've been lying about your financial situation while borrowing money from multiple sources? Everyone struggles. Are you denying that you stood by and applauded when Dad assaulted me?" Maris's face turned white. She started recording hoping to catch me saying something incriminating, but instead she created evidence of her own guilt. You can't prove any of that," she said. "Actually, I can," I replied, still recording. "I have bank records, social media posts, witness statements, and now this conversation, where you haven't denied any of it." Maris realized she had walked into a trap. She stopped recording and reached for my phone, but I moved back. "Don't touch me," I declared loudly enough for everyone in the foyer to hear. "You've already been involved in one assault. I won't give you the opportunity for another." Security arrived at that point. My assistant had contacted them when Maris began screaming. Maris turned back to make one final threat as they took her out. "This isn't over, Claire. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." "They already do," I said back. "That's the problem." The footage of our lobby confrontation, captured by building security cameras, somehow made its way to social media. Maris's aggressive actions, inability to reject the claims, and effort to take my phone created a clear picture of who was the true aggressor in this circumstance. The repercussions were quick and terrible. Maris's remaining friends distanced themselves from her. The few family members who had been attempting to remain neutral suddenly took sides, and it wasn't Maris's. Henry's parents, who had taken them in, began to raise uncomfortable questions about the type of person their son had married. But Maris wasn't finished yet. My attorney called me about a week after the office event occurred. "Claire, I've received some interesting correspondence," he told her. "Your sister has hired a lawyer, and they're threatening to sue you for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and something called tortious interference with family relationships." I nearly laughed. "She's suing me for telling the truth about her behavior." Apparently. Her lawyer sent a demand letter asking for monetary damages and a public apology. They're also demanding that you cease and desist all investigation into their financial affairs. What do you think of their case? Frankly, it's crap. Everything you've revealed is either factual or based on your own documented experiences. The truth provides an absolute protection against defamation. As for the emotional distress claim, they will have a difficult time establishing it because they were the ones who coordinated a public campaign against you. In this context, interference with family relationships is not a valid cause of action. You cannot be sued for exposing criminal behavior simply because the culprits are connected to you. My attorney hesitated. "However, I believe they are trying to frighten you into backing down. Maris's lawyer is presumably hoping you'll settle rather than go through the inconvenience and expense of litigation." "They picked the wrong person to intimidate," I told them. "File a countersuit." Within 6 weeks, the first dominoes had fallen, and my family's world was beginning to unravel. Maris and Henry faced foreclosure, bankruptcy, tax liens, job loss, and CPS involvement. Dad was being investigated for elder abuse and fraud, with criminal charges anticipated. Mom was now in a professional care facility, and her finances were safe, albeit she was grieved by Dad's deception. And me? I was sitting in my vacation cottage with Finn, drinking wine and admiring the sunset over the mountains. I'd also started spending time with Luke, a nice guy I met through a hiking club who found my independence exciting rather than intimidating. Maris called me dozens of times. So did Dad. Even relatives who had stood by and watched my humiliation began to reach out, anxious about family unity and forgiveness. I blocked them all. Mom was the only person I kept in contact with, and I visited her at the care facility on a regular basis. She was experiencing more good days than bad, and on her good days, she was grateful that I had protected her from her father's financial abuse, even if she was very grieved by his treachery. "I always knew you were the strong one," she said on one of our visits. "I just wish I'd been brave enough to recognize what was happening sooner." Maris visited my place 3 months after the celebration. She looked terrible, skinny, weary, with dark circles under her eyes. Her automobile was a beat-up Honda that I didn't recognize, probably all they could afford after losing their finer vehicles to repossession. "Claire, please," she murmured as I opened the door. "We need to talk." "I have nothing to say to you," I responded, beginning to close the door. "Wait," she said, placing her hand against the door. "I know you're angry, but my kids, they don't deserve this. They're going to be homeless." "Your kids are innocent," I agreed, "which is why CPS is making sure they're in a safe environment with parents who can provide for them." "The parenting classes are humiliating," she added, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And Henry can't find work because of his record. Now we're losing everything." "You have already lost everything," I pointed out. "You lost it the moment you decided to attack me in front of a room full of people for not giving you my property." "It was just words, Claire. People say things when they're stressed." "Dad hit me," I quipped, "and you applauded. You stood there and clapped while your father assaulted me because I wouldn't give you something that didn't belong to you." Maris gazed down at her feet. "I know that was wrong." "No," I replied firmly. "You don't get to downplay this. You planned my public humiliation. You described me as a family disappointment. You agreed with Dad labeling me a barren waste. You cheered as he hit me. and now you want my aid since dealing with the repercussions is difficult? What can I do to make this right? She pleaded urgently. I contemplated her question for a long time. Nothing, I replied finally. There is nothing you can do. You cannot take back your words. You can't take back the shame. You can't reverse the onslaught. And you can't deny that you all showed me who you truly are. But we're family. No, I replied, cutting her off. Family does not treat each other in the same way as you treated me. Family members do not gang up on one another. Family members do not physically assault each other. When someone is harmed, family members do not applaud. Claire, I'm begging you. Are you begging me now? I observed. But where was the humility when you demanded my vacation home? Where was your care for my family when you called me names in front of 30 people? Maris broke down and sobbed on my doorway. Part of me felt sorry for her, remembering the little sister I grew up with before she turned entitled and harsh. But the majority of me remembered standing in that room, hand placed against my burning cheek, as people celebrated my humiliation. I'm sorry, she said through tears. I'm sure you are, I said. You are sad that you are facing penalties. You're sorry your idea backfired. You're sorry you're losing your home, career, and nice lifestyle. But are you sorry for the way you treated me? Are you remorseful for years of taking advantage of my generosity? Are you sorry you stood by when Dad called me a barren waste? She glanced up at me, and I could see in her eyes that she was remorseful, but only because she had been apprehended, and only because her world was collapsing. She didn't apologize for hurting me. She apologized for becoming upset in return. Goodbye, Maris, I replied, closing the door. Over the next few months, I learned through common contacts that Maris and Henry had moved in with his parents in another state after losing their home when they were unable to satisfy the adjusted loan terms. Dad eventually pleaded guilty to various crimes involving elder financial exploitation. The family members who had witnessed my humiliation were now suffering with the social consequences of their association with the affair. However, the legal procedure has gone slowly, as it always does. The IRS probe lasted almost a year. The elder abuse case took 18 months to resolve in court. Maris's many financial schemes were scrutinized by multiple agencies over a 2-year period. And me. I was prospering. I'd obtained a promotion at work, thanks in part to the relief of no longer having to deal with my family's financial crisis. My social life improved considerably after I stopped spending every weekend dealing with Maris's latest emergency or Dad's demands for family reunions, where I was treated like a second-class person. Finn and I spent our weekends in the vacation cabin, hiking, reading, and enjoying the solitude. I'd started seeing Luke, a nice guy I found through a hiking group, who thought my independence was attractive rather than dangerous. Most significantly, I had understood the distinction between being alone and lonely. I'd been lonely for years, surrounded by family members who only saw me for what I could offer. Now I was alone by choice, but I had true friends, meaningful work, and a sense of self-worth that no one could take away. Finn remained my trusty friend throughout, and Luke had become a vital part of my life, someone who valued me for who I was rather than what I could give. The truth is that I did not destroy my family. They wrecked themselves with their selfishness, entitlement, and brutality. I just stopped letting them evade the repercussions of their decisions. People occasionally ask me if I feel bad about what occurred. The answer is no. I'm sad that it came to this. It's unfortunate that the individuals I loved turned out to be so different from who I believed they were. But guilty? Never. They made their decisions that night at Maris's party. They chose harshness over kindness. They selected public humiliation over private discourse. They chose violence over respect. They chose to treat me as an ATM rather than a family member. I simply decided to cease pretending that their behavior was okay. Maris was working in retail and living paycheck to paycheck when I last heard from her. Dad's legal problems were continuous, and the stress had a negative impact on his health. The extended family members who had condoned their actions were now faced with the social ramifications of being involved with elder abuse and financial fraud. As for me, I'm writing from my vacation cottage, with Finn asleep at my feet and a cup of coffee becoming cold next to my laptop. Luke is coming up later this weekend, and we're going to go to a waterfall I've been wanting to show him. My life is not perfect, but it is mine. It is authentic. It's based on true relationships with individuals who regard me for who I am, rather than what I can provide them. And what about that holiday cabin they all desired so badly? It's precisely what it was designed to be, A place where someone who has worked hard for what they have may find serenity and contentment, surrounded by people who come because they want to, not because they believe they are entitled to it. Sometimes getting even isn't the greatest way to exact revenge. Sometimes it's as simple as removing yourself from the equation and allowing individuals to face the natural consequences of their choices. Sometimes it's about creating a life so much better than your previous one that you realize the people who wounded you did you a favor by revealing who they truly were. Sometimes the best vengeance is simply living well, and I am living quite well. She called me a hero publicly, then sued me privately, but I had footage, witnesses, and her own husband's evidence. She didn't see it coming. It was an ordinary Wednesday. I had ended my shift at the physical therapy clinic and was walking to my car when I heard the crash. A silver SUV had wound itself around a large oak tree nearby. Smoke was already flowing from behind the hood. The driver's door opened and a woman fell out, holding her phone up as if she were recording. She kept wailing about her kid as she backed away from the car. I'm not sure why I ran toward it. I am not brave. I'm the one that calls maintenance to kill spiders. I opened the back door to see a youngster strapped into her car seat. The smoke was becoming thicker. The heat caused my eyes to moisten. I fumbled with the buckles, my hands shaking so much that I could hardly operate the release. The little child was wailing, and I kept saying, "It's okay, despite the fact that nothing was okay. I got her out somehow. Then something exploded, causing pain in my arm and throat. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground clutching this child while strangers pushed us away from the flaming automobile. The hospital was blurry. I have third-degree burns on my right arm, shoulder, and neck. A portion of my ear was missing. They warned me that I might not be able to use my hand fully again, which terrified me because I required both hands for my profession. Fortunately, the small kid was unharmed. Her mother, Martha, came once. I recognized her from around the town. She led the mommy clubs at the community center and had a blog about organic parenting or something. She thanked me for saving her daughter and urged me not to tell anyone about the accident. She said she couldn't afford bad publicity. I was pretty high and just wanted to sleep, so I agreed. Things were strange after that. People started avoiding me in the grocery store. My coworker stated that she had heard I was exploiting the tragedy for publicity. Someone keyed my car. When I went to renew my lease, the owner of my apartment building inquired about any legal troubles I was involved in. Then I was served with papers. Martha sued me for defamation and mental anguish. According to her lawyer, I had been spreading misinformation about saving her daughter, which was harming her parenting business. I sat on my bathroom floor for an hour, crying. I couldn't afford an attorney. I could hardly afford to pay my medical bills. My dominant hand remained basically worthless, and I was only working part-time. Mrs. Thompson, a nice old lady who witnessed the incident from her porch, was the only one who helped. She informed me Martha was on her phone when she hit the tree, and I jumped into the fire while Martha fled. She offered to inform anyone who would listen. I found a lawyer who will labor for practically nothing. While preparing my case, my lawyer obtained CCTV from the wine bar down the street where the accident occurred. It showed Martha departing at midday, getting into her car, and video chatting on her phone. Her lawyers contacted mine regarding a settlement. They wanted me to publicly apologize and sign a statement promising never to talk about it again. The meeting was held in this antiseptic conference room downtown. Martha accompanied her husband, Robert. He seemed unhappy and kept staring at his hands. Martha looked through her phone as the lawyers spoke. I didn't anticipate what happened next. I just became angry. Truly angry. For the first time since the accident. I put out all of the information my lawyer had discovered, including surveillance footage, data from her car indicating she was speeding, and testimonials from other mothers who had witnessed her drinking at a morning gathering. Martha's face turned gray. Robert looked like he was about to puke up. I told them to drop the case and pay my medical bills or I'd let everyone know the truth. They paid. I assumed that was the end of it. That was 3 months ago. My hand is steadily improving. I can work 4 days a week now. I was performing my exercises tonight when I heard a knock on my door. It was Robert. He looked dreadful, as if he hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said. "I found something." I almost didn't allow him in, but he seemed lost. He showed me screenshots from their doorbell camera dating back months, showing Martha stumbling to the car with Ella, Martha backing into objects, and Martha taking drinks to the car in the morning. "I installed a camera in her car last week," he explained gently. Look at this. The video is from yesterday. Martha swerved while Maya cried in the back seat. She yelled at her to stop talking as she hunted for her medication. I need help, Robert stated. My lawyer says I need more evidence for full custody, and I need someone who knows what she's capable of. Will you help me? I felt my stomach turn as I looked at Robert's desperate expression. The apartment suddenly seemed too small. I strolled to the kitchen and took 2 glasses of water, giving myself some time to consider. My scorched palm trembled as I placed one in front of him. I don't know if I can do this, I murmured, sitting across from him at my small dining table. Your wife already tried to destroy my life once. Robert rubs his eyes. She's getting worse. Yesterday she forgot to pick Maya up from daycare. They called me at work. When I confronted her, she said I was being controlling. He pulled out other videos from his phone, showing Martha weaving through traffic, Martha passing asleep on the couch while Maya played unsupervised, and Martha pouring something into her morning smoothie that clearly wasn't protein powder. My lawyer says the court favors mothers, Robert explained. Even with all this, they might just order supervised visits or rehab. I need someone who will testify about what really happened that day. I flexed my injured hand and felt the tight pull of scar tissue. The physical therapy exercises were beneficial, but I'd never regained complete range of motion, all because I went toward the flaming automobile while Martha fled. What exactly do you need from me? I asked you. Documentation, witness statements, help me build a case that shows a pattern, Robert said, leaning forward. I've been tracking everything for weeks, but I need someone else who sees what's happening, someone credible. My phone buzzed. Unknown. I almost ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. Is this the woman who saved the little girl? The voice was female and nervous. Who is this? I'm Jenna, from Martha's mommy group. I heard you might be willing to talk about what really happened. I looked at Robert. He mouthed, speakerphone. I can't really discuss. She's been drinking at our morning meetings, Jenna said. Puts vodka in her coffee thermos. We've all noticed, but nobody wants to say anything because she runs the whole program. But after what happened to you, some of us are worried about Maya. My heart raced. Would you be willing to make a statement? Maybe. There are 3 other moms who feel the same way. Can we meet? We planned to meet in a coffee shop the following day. After I hung up, Robert began entering notes onto his phone. This is good, he said. Really good. My lawyer will want to talk to them. Over the following hour, Robert showed me everything he had documented, including liquor store receipts, text exchanges in which Martha blamed him for her drinking, and images of empty bottles stashed about their house. It painted a picture of someone losing control. When did it get this bad? I inquired. It's been building for years, but after the accident, after you saved Maya, Robert's voice crackled. She became obsessed with controlling the narrative, spent more time managing her image than taking care of our daughter. He left around 10 o'clock, but not before downloading a secure messaging software onto my phone for documentation. He explained that everything needs to be properly recorded. I hardly slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that flaming car, rescuing Maya while her mother stood back and recorded on her phone. The following morning, I met Jenna and 3 other women at the coffee shop. They all had stories of Martha showing up smelling like booze, Martha sleeping off during story time, and Martha requesting other moms to watch Maya because she had errands that took hours. We considered reporting it, added Amanda, but she knows everyone. She'd make it seem like we were jealous or attempting to take over her business. I videotaped everything on my phone with their permission initially. They agreed to talk to Robert's lawyer. As I was walking back to my car, my phone rang. Martha. I know what you're doing, she added without elaborating. Robert told me everything. You are attempting to steal my family. Martha, I'm not trying to. I have lawyers too. Good ones. If you testify against me, I will make what happened before appear insignificant. I want to sue you for stalking, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I will ensure that you never work as a physical therapist again. The call went dead. I sat in my car, shaking, but this time, it wasn't out of fear, but rather out of rage. I immediately shared the recording with Robert. That afternoon, I underwent physical treatment for my hand. Marcus, my therapist, sensed my stiffness right away. Have a rough day? He inquired, massaging my fingertips. You could say that. As he operated on my hand, I remembered Maya, the terrified little girl I'd rescued from a flaming automobile. Did she recall that day? Did she realize her mother had gone away while she burned? My phone was continually buzzing throughout the session. Robert sends updates. His attorney wanted to schedule meetings. Jenna has forwarded screenshots of troubling posts from Martha's social network. By the time I arrived home, I had 17 missed calls from unknown numbers. My voicemail was full of messages, some encouraging, some frightening. Word traveled quickly in our small town. Someone hammered on my door as I was making soup. Through the peephole, I saw Martha. She appeared disheveled, with her usually flawless hair knotted and makeup smudged. "Open up!" she exclaimed. "I know you are in there." I did not move. "You ruined everything," she mumbled. "My business, my reputation, and now you want my daughter too." I heard a crash. She'd thrown something at my door. Then footsteps run away. I called Robert immediately. "Your wife has just come to my flat. She's hammered." "Where is Maya?" was his initial query. "I do not know. She was alone." I overheard him swear. "I am at work. Can you—" He paused. "No, I can't ask you to do that." "Ask me what?" "Check if Maya is at daycare. They close in 30 minutes. I picked up my keys without thinking. The childcare was just 10 minutes away. When I arrived, the director appeared relieved to see me. "Are you here for Maya?" We had been attempting to call her parents for an hour. My heart fell. "Call Robert. Tell him I'm going to take her to my flat. He can pick her up there." Maya recalled me the moment she saw me. She stretched out her small arms. "Help her, lady," she said. I strapped Maya into the back seat, her small fingers grasping a plush elephant. The drive back to my place took longer than usual since I kept checking my mirrors, worried that Martha was following us. Maya spoke merrily about her day, completely ignorant of the mayhem around her. Robert came 20 minutes later, still wearing his work clothes. He drew Maya into his arms, embracing her as if he would never let go. While he got her relaxed with some crackers and a cartoon on my laptop, I brewed coffee with my right hand. "She's been tracking me," Robert muttered quietly, now that Maya was distracted. "I discovered an app on my phone yesterday. She knows where I go." My blood became chilly. "How long?" "Months. Perhaps a little longer. My lawyer believes she may have also left something on your phone when she visited you in the hospital." I grabbed my phone, feeling violated. Robert helped me look for tracking apps, but we couldn't find anything evident. Nonetheless, the harm was done. Martha might be aware of every text message, phone conversation, and meeting place. The following several days blurred together. I went to work, attempting to act normal as my phone buzzed with Robert and the other mom's updates. Jenna had persuaded 2 additional ladies to come forward. One featured photographs of Martha slipping on a playground. Another had stored voicemails in which Martha slurred her speech while planning playdates. Thursday morning, I awoke to find that my automobile would not start. The mechanic stated that someone had put sugar in the gas tank. Mrs. Thompson called while I was waiting for the repairs. She saw someone approach my car at 3 a.m. The description matched Martha. I started taking alternative routes to work and parking in various locations. My coworkers sensed my paranoia. Marcus approached me over lunch and expressed concern about the black circles under my eyes. I wanted to tell him everything, but Robert's lawyer had instructed me to keep silent until they filed the custody paperwork. That evening, Robert contacted me to ask if I could watch Maya again. Martha had vanished that morning, and the daycare refused to release Maya to anybody but authorized contacts. I was obviously still on the list from when I had picked her up previously. Maya appeared quieter this time. She kept asking for her mother, and I had to bite my tongue to avoid saying something I would regret. We colored pictures and read stories till Robert came, looking exhausted. "She emptied our joint savings account," he added, as Maya was sleeping on my couch. $12,000 gone. "The bank says they can't do anything because her name was on it." He showed me the security footage from their bank. Martha had walked in that morning, calm and collected, not like the disheveled woman who'd knocked on my door. She'd spoken with the teller and even laughed at something they said. It was unsettling how ordinary she appeared. "My lawyer filed the emergency custody petition today," Robert explained, "but she must be served. We can't find her." Martha transformed into a ghost during the course of the following week. She would appear at random times. She was noticed at the grocery store by Jenna. Another mom saw her driving past the daycare, and she was caught on security cameras withdrawing cash from several ATMs. But when Robert or his process server arrived, she was gone. The other moms became apprehensive. Amanda contacted to say she had received a letter from a lawyer regarding slander. Jenna's husband discovered their car tires slashed. The woman who took the playground images suddenly decided she didn't want to be part anymore. I understood their fear. My personal life was crumbling. My landlady informed me that someone had filed several noise complaints against me. My manager received an anonymous letter saying that I was stealing drugs from the clinic. Each claim was baseless, but it took time and effort to disprove. The situation then escalated. I was leaving work late on a Wednesday when I noticed my car leaning to one side. 2 tires had been cut. As I called for a tow truck, a police cruiser arrived. The officer stated that they had gotten a report of someone matching my description vandalizing vehicles in the parking lot. It took an hour to persuade them to look into the CCTV tape, which clearly showed me inside the building when the damage occurred. But a seed of distrust had been sowed. My co-workers look at me differently today. Robert was doing no better. He contacted me frantically after the police arrived at his business. Someone reported witnessing him strike Ella in a parking lot. The investigation revealed nothing, but his company placed him on administrative leave pending review. "She's trying to make us both look unstable," he stated during one of our encrypted app discussions. "My lawyer claims that is a regular approach. If she cannot win, she will ensure that everyone loses." The breakthrough occurred from an unexpected source. Mrs. Thompson contacted me on a Saturday morning, whispering as if she were revealing state secrets. "That woman Martha, she's been staying at the Riverside Motel," she informed me. "My nephew does maintenance there. She registered under a false identity, paying in cash." Robert's process server eventually got up to her that afternoon. The custody court was scheduled for the following Friday, giving Maya 5 days to prepare for what would either save her or consign her to further chaos. But Martha was not done. Monday morning, I arrived at work to see police cars in the parking lot. My employer met me at the door, her expression grim. "There's been an incident," she explained. "Someone broke into the pharmaceutical storage unit over the weekend. The surveillance footage. It displays someone who resembles you." My legs almost gave out. I quickly realized what had happened. Martha had somehow obtained film of me, possibly from the hospital or somewhere else, or found someone who looked similar. It did not matter. The damage was done. I was suspended pending an investigation. Without work, I couldn't afford a lawyer. Without my lawyer, I could not adequately assist Robert. It was a great yet horrible strategy. Robert took me up from the police station after 5 hours of interrogation. Maya was in the back seat, and seeing her little face clarified everything. It wasn't about me, Robert, or Martha anymore. It was about a young child who deserved better than this mayhem. "My lawyer has an idea," Robert explained as we drove. "But it's risky." The concept was simple. Record everything in real time. Create an indisputable record of Martha's activity that cannot be disputed or distorted. Robert's lawyer had introduced us to a private detective who specialized in custody matters. For the next 3 days, we investigated our own lives. The investigator taught us how to legally record interactions, preserve evidence, and establish unbreakable documentation chains. Every threat, event, and sighting were scrupulously documented. Wednesday afternoon, everything went awry. I was at the grocery store getting supplies for the week when my phone rang. Robert, screaming. "Maya's gone," he exclaimed. "The daycare reports that Martha picked her up an hour ago. She had documents. Said there was a family emergency." My heart has stopped. The custody hearing was scheduled in 2 days. If Martha took off with Maya right now, we might never locate them. "Have you called the police?" I inquired, already going for my car. "They claim it is not kidnapping because she is the mother. Without the custody decree, their hands are tied." I drove to Robert's residence, my thoughts racing. Martha had planned this. The fictitious residence, cash withdrawals, the systematic eradication of our credibility. Everything leads up to this point. When I arrived, Robert was on his laptop, feverishly scanning Martha's social media and email accounts. He still had access to anything that could provide us with a clue. His hand shook while typing. "She's not stupid enough to use credit cards," he murmured. "But she needs to get there. She can't simply disappear." Then I recalled something. Martha mentioned a cabin owned by her family in the north during one of her mother group sessions months ago. She described it as her escape when she needed to ponder. Jenna had also mentioned it, saying Martha had discussed taking Maya there for a digital detox weekend. "The cabin," I replied. "Does Martha's family own a cabin?" Robert's eyes expanded. "Her parents' home. It's around 3 hours north. She used to go there whenever we battled." We called his lawyer, who advised us not to go. However, the private investigator was willing to drive there and check. The wait was awful. Robert paced his living room as I sat on the couch, my burned palm throbbing with worry. 2 hours later, the investigator called. Martha's automobile was in the cabin. He saw activity within. Maya appeared to be safe, playing in the living room as Martha packed boxes. The attorney performed her magic. Within an hour, she had an emergency hearing planned for the evening. After being provided with proof of Martha's flight risk and documented events, the judge issued a temporary order granting Robert emergency custody and ordering law police to take Maya. The trip to the cabin seemed forever. Robert rode with the sheriff's deputies, and I followed in my automobile. We arrived as the sun was setting, sending deep shadows among the pine trees. I stayed in my car as directed, watching the deputies approach the cabin. Martha's horror upon seeing them was visible through the glass. She attempted to protest, gesturing furiously, but the deputies remained calm and professional. When they brought Maya out, she was in tears, perplexed by all the uniformed strangers. Robert dashed to her, snatching her up and clutching her tightly. Over his shoulder, I noticed Martha being brought to a deputy's car. She wasn't arrested yet, but she would have to attend the detention hearing. As we drove back to town, my phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Without seeing, I knew it was Martha, most likely using a burner phone. "This isn't over," the note stated. "You have shattered my life. I will ruin yours." I deleted it without answering, but did take a screenshot beforehand. Just another piece of evidence in the accumulating file. The custody hearing arrived earlier than expected. I wore my nicest clothing, attempting to conceal the burn scars that had crept up my neck. Robert sat with his lawyer, appearing older than his age. Across the aisle, Martha had changed again. The ragged woman was no longer standing on my porch. She appeared sleek and professional, every inch the devoted mother. I testified for 2 hours, every detail, from the accident to the lawsuit, threats, and harassment. Martha's lawyer attempted to portray me as a bitter woman seeking attention, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, recorded calls, witness comments from mothers who had finally agreed to testify. It all provided a clear picture. When the judge announced his decision, temporary full custody for Robert, supervised visitation only for Martha pending a substance usage evaluation, I assumed it was over. Martha's scream of wrath suggested otherwise. Security had to remove her out of the courtroom because she was shouting threats at everyone involved. Robert held Maya in the corridor, attempting to hide her from her mother's tantrum. The tiny kid only looked perplexed, grabbing for the mom being taken away. That night, I finally slept soundly. My work was still in jeopardy, my reputation had suffered, and my hand might never fully recover, but Maya was secure. That was what mattered. The tranquility lasted only one day. Saturday morning, I awoke to a lot of sirens. My apartment complex was surrounded by emergency vehicles. I pulled on clothes and dashed outdoors to discover my building in disarray. "Gas leak," my neighbor said. "Somebody interfered with the main line." If Mrs. Patel hadn't smelled it and called 911, the entire building could have exploded. The fire chief questioned everyone. Around 3 a.m., security footage captured a figure in dark clothing near the gas meters, but the image was too blurry to identify. I knew, however. We all knew. Robert called while I was giving my statement, his voice taut with barely contained panic. "She's gone," he replied. "Martha never arrived for her monitored visit. Her apartment is empty. Her automobile is gone. Nobody has seen her since yesterday." The police issued an alert, but Martha had disappeared. Days passed into weeks with no trace of her. Robert created a security system and rarely let Maya out of his sight. I stayed with friends because I was too afraid to return to my flat, even after the gas line was patched. Then Jenna called with news that altered everything. "I just saw her," she muttered. "Martha. She is in the mall, but she is not like everyone else. Her hair is dyed black and she has lost weight. I don't think she noticed me." Within minutes, Robert's investigator was on his way, but by the time he arrived, Martha had left again. Jenna's sighting was confirmed on security cameras. It was clearly Martha transformed, but yet recognizable. She was still in town. We're still watching. Still planning. The investigator stepped up surveillance, but Martha had learned from her mistakes. She only used cash, stayed in several motels, and changed her appearance frequently. The only constant was her obsession. She was sighted near Robert's house, my business, and Maya's daycare, constantly looking from afar. 2 weeks after her disappearance, I made a decision. I couldn't live in dread indefinitely. I returned to my apartment, resumed battling for my work, and attempted to regain some routine. Robert felt I was insane, but I was tired of allowing Martha to dominate my life. That is when she made her next move. I was making breakfast when my phone rang with Robert's number. However, when I responded, it was Maya's voice. "Help her, lady. Mommy says we are going on an adventure." My blood turned icy. I heard rustling followed by Martha's unnaturally pleasant voice. "Say goodbye to your friend, sweetie. We won't see her for a while." The call went dead. I immediately contacted Robert, but his phone went directly to voicemail. Racing to his residence, I discovered the front door wide open. Robert lay on the kitchen floor, cradling his head. Blood flowed through his fingers. "She hit me with something," he complained as I helped him sit up. "They came via the back as I was making coffee." I took Ella. I dialed 911 while placing a dish towel against his head. The gash was not deep, but head wounds bleed profusely. While we waited for the ambulance, I looked at the surveillance cameras. Martha was seen entering the back gate at 6:47 a.m., carrying what appeared to be a tire iron. The police arrived along with the paramedics. This time, they took the charges seriously. Assault, breach of a custody order, and kidnapping. Real charges, real penalties. One Amber Alert was issued within 1 hour. Robert refused to go to the hospital until the investigator had taken his statement. I drove behind the ambulance, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. At the emergency room, doctors patched him up and performed concussion tests. He continued asking the nurses if they had heard anything about Maya. Jenna called while we were awaiting the CT findings. She was at a rest stop 2 hours north and had just seen Martha's car, not the one we knew about, but a different one. Older model vehicle with mud on the license plate. "She's in the bathroom with Ella right now," Jenna said quietly. "What shall I do?" I put her on speaker so Robert could hear. He attempted to stand up, but the nurse forced him back down. "Don't confront her," I said. "Can you follow them? See where they go?" Jenna agreed to try. She was accompanying her teenage son on a college tour. They could follow Martha without becoming too obvious. I gave her the detective's number and advised her to remain safe. The following hour crept by. Robert's scan showed no blood and only a moderate concussion. As soon as he was released, we drove to the police station. The detective had set up a command center to coordinate with state police and monitor Jenna's progress. Martha was traveling northwest, taking back routes. Jenna's son was savvy, following several cars behind and occasionally switching ranks. They'd stopped for gas once, and Jenna managed to capture a clear photo of the license plate. Eleanor Briggs was the registered owner of the automobile. The detective's fingers sped across her keyboard, bringing up information. Eleanor Briggs died 3 months ago. Her family reported her automobile taken from a hospice parking lot. "She's been planning this for months," Robert explained, his voice lifeless. Jenna reported at midday that Martha had turned onto a woodland road. She couldn't follow without being observed, so she marked the area and backed away. Within 20 minutes, police units converged on the scene. The detective allowed us to listen in on radio chatter. Officers were putting up obstacles and closing off escape routes. A helicopter was en route. They had found 3 rental cottages in that region of forest. Someone who matched Martha's description purchased one in cash last week. Robert grasped my good hand so tightly that it hurt. Neither of us spoke. The radio hummed with updates. Officers approaching the cabin, vehicle confirmed in the driveway, and movement inside. Then came quiet. Long, excruciating silence. "Subject in custody," said the final report. "Kids are safe, requesting medical assistance to check her out." Robert collapsed on me and sobbed. I held him while he shook, my eyes welling up with tears that I refused to let fall. Not yet. Not until I knew Maya was actually fine. The drive to the distant police station seemed to take forever. Robert called his lawyer, parents, and sister. I drove in solitude, digesting what had happened. 6 months ago, I was merely a physical therapist who avoided confrontation. Now I was involved in custody battles and police investigations. We were not permitted to visit Maya immediately. She needs to be checked and interviewed carefully by specialists. Martha was in detention, but her new lawyer was already raising concerns about rights abuses and illegal processes. Finally, a social worker carried Maya outside. She raced towards Robert, putting her small arms around his neck. She spotted me over his shoulder and reached out with one hand. "Help her, lady, please join us," she said. I hugged them both, being cautious of Robert's bandaged head. Maya seemed fine, chatting about the camping trip Mommy had taken her on. She had no idea why there were so many police officers or why Daddy was crying. The following several days blurred together. Martha was charged with assault, custodial interference, and child endangerment. Her bond was set high enough that even if she was able to obtain concealed monies, she would remain imprisoned until trial. The inquiry revealed that she had been planning this for months, gradually moving money, creating phony identities, and researching places to hide. My suspension from work was overturned after the police established that the security film had been doctored. Someone had mixed video from different days to make it appear that I was in the medication room. The IT specialist who evaluated it stated that it was complicated work that would most likely be outsourced to someone with real skills. Robert and Maya remained with his parents as he increased security at his home. I returned to my flat and installed new locks and a CCTV system. The other moms in the playgroup established a rotation, assisting with Maya when Robert went to work or meet with lawyers. A week after the arrest, I received an unexpected call. Martha wanted to see me. Her lawyer said she needed to tell me something significant regarding the accident. Against everyone's advice, I decided to go. The jail's visiting area was dismal, with scratched plexiglass and uncomfortable chairs. Martha appeared smaller in the orange jumpsuit, her dyed hair coming out from the roots. When she sat across from me, I could hardly identify the sophisticated mommy blogger from before. "I wasn't hammered that day," she stated without explanation. "The day of the accident, I'd taken pills. Benzo, been taking them for years." I waited, not trusting my ability to speak. "I started after Maya was born. Postpartum anxiety. One med became two became four. By the time of the accident, I was taking 10 times the prescribed dose just to feel normal." She laughed cruelly. "Perfect mommy blogger with a perfect life, popping pills like candy. When you saved Maya, when everyone called you a hero, I panicked. If the truth came out, I'd lose everything. So I tried to destroy you instead." "Why tell me now?" I inquired. She shrugged. "My lawyer says showing remorse might help at sentencing. Plus, you deserve to know. You saved my daughter when I was too high to do it myself." I went without saying goodbye. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and finally allowed myself to cry, for Maya, Robert, and even Martha. For the entire catastrophe that began with one moment of deciding to rush into danger rather than away. The trial took 3 months to schedule. During that period, life took on a new cadence. I worked 4 days a week, gradually regaining strength in my broken hand. Robert and I became friends through trauma, but our friendship grew into something more genuine. Maya began calling me Aunt Helper, which made me chuckle each time. Martha pleaded guilty to avoid a lengthier sentence of 3 years, with the potential of parole in 18 months if she completed treatment and parenting courses. Robert was granted full custody, with no visits until Martha finished her programs and passed frequent substance tests. The day after sentencing, I was in the park with Maya while Robert met with his lawyer to discuss divorce papers. She was tackling the monkey bars, trying to get all the way across, despite her small hands. On her 5th attempt, she succeeded, tumbling to the ground with a victorious yell. "I did it! Did you see?" "I saw," I said, high-fiving her with my free hand. "You're getting so strong." She smiled at me before taking a serious tone. "Will you always watch me be strong?" I reflected on everything that had led up to this point. The crash, the fire, the lawsuits, the threats, and the long journey from Wednesday, when I nearly walked past a blazing automobile. "Yeah," I answered. "I'll always watch." Robert arrived with divorce papers signed and submitted. He grabbed Maya up and spun her around, making her squeal. While watching them, I felt something settle in my chest. Not quite peace, there was still too much to do for that. But perhaps the beginning. My hand would never completely recover. Martha would make it out eventually. The scars, both inside and out, would remain permanent. But Maya was unharmed. That was what mattered. Sometimes the best ends aren't actually endings. They're just another beginning, messier, yet more realistic than any fairy tale. Standing in that park, I watched a small girl I'd rescued from a blazing automobile play with her father. My mother let the man who assaulted me hold my daughter. Then she helped him sue me for custody. When I was 16, Ethan, my husband's best friend, took advantage of me. However, that wasn't the worst part. You know, my mother never liked my husband, but she adored Ethan. He was from a great family with a high reputation. So when Ethan did what he did to me, my mother didn't believe me. To make matters worse, Ethan's mother was also my mother's supervisor, which I knew played a significant role in my mother's refusal to believe me. But I refused to remain silent. Despite my mother's objections, I went to the authorities. While I was awaiting trial, I moved in with my boyfriend, now husband, and his parents since my mother became angry toward me at home. However, this is when things started to go wrong. I discovered I was pregnant while at my boyfriend's. I knew it wasn't my boyfriend's either, because we were never intimate, and I'd never been with anyone like that before. Fast forward 5 months to the end of the trial, and Ethan agreed to the accusations and accepted a plea deal. He received no jail time. The only restriction was that he never received permission to see my kid. She was born 9 months later, and my mother asked me to move back home and apologize for everything she had done. I knew it was fishy, but she was my mother, so I chose to forgive her. Big mistake, although not at first. The first year was calm. My mother apologized to me, was the perfect grandmother, and served us dinner. But then, a year later, everything changed, and not because my mother did. You see, I attended college a few hours away, and my mother had retired early to care for my daughter while I was gone. During the week, I remained on campus and returned home on weekends. Well, one day we had a massive snowstorm and my Thursday and Friday classes were canceled, so I went home early without telling my mother, hoping to surprise her. Guess who was in the kitchen when I walked in? Ethan's mom, my mother, and Ethan. Ethan was also holding Chloe, my daughter, as I entered. They were astonished, to say the least. I flipped out, grabbed my daughter, and packed a suitcase with her belongings. My mother and Ethan's mother pleaded with me not to leave while I was packing. When I tried to leave, my mother was crying and begged me to forgive her. I told her I would never forgive her and walked out. On my way out, Ethan grabbed my arm and told me to be kinder to my mother. My mother called me hundreds of times, but I never responded. I left to get an apartment with my husband and children. I also arranged for a babysitter while I was in class. A week following this occurrence, my mother deposited more than $100,000 in my bank account in order to buy me over or get me to speak with her. I didn't even know where she got the money. Years later, my younger sister got married, and I had to reconnect with my mother. I had to remain courteous with her while she inquired about Chloe, who she hadn't seen in 10 years, my son Noah, and my current pregnancy. She told me she wanted to settle things with me and meet her grandchildren before she died. She even said that she had always believed me about what had transpired. She simply did not want to be fired. I asked if she still hangs around with Ethan's mother. She spoke occasionally, but mostly at church. I ended the conversation. I was upset because, in addition to enabling Ethan to see my daughter, she hung out with the woman who traveled around town telling everyone that I was lying, that Ethan had done nothing wrong, and that we had a relationship. And I felt horrible about it. So I lied and claimed something happened. When I arrived home, I was just angry and needed to calm down. That night, I reflected a lot on what had transpired. The next day, I decided to phone my mother for the first time in 10 years. I wanted to talk to her more and see if we could move on from what had happened, and if I could forgive her. Initially, the conversation went well. We were discussing current events in our lives, but the subject shifted to church, which led to her talking about Ethan. She felt the need to tell me how much my daughter resembled his other children, because I am supposedly expected to care. I told her I didn't want to talk about him, but she persisted. She said he's a better guy now and feels bad about what he did, and that I should forgive him because it was so long ago. You should be over it by now, she explained. I got angry. My mother has never heard about what happened to me. She only ever heard his version of what happened. So I informed her what really happened and how her talking about the man who hurt me would make me lose all respect for her. I advised her not to call me, to preserve our relationship as it has been for the past few years, since she will never change. I ended by telling her that I would never bring any of my children around her because I didn't trust her. My palms shook as I hung up the phone. I stepped into the kitchen and got myself a glass of water, attempting to calm my breathing. My husband looked up from his laptop at the dining table, concerned on his face. He didn't need to inquire what had happened. He could see it all on me. I sat down hard in the chair across from him, the glass quivering in my hand. My stomach churned as I recalled my mother's nonchalant mention of Ethan's other children, as if comparing them to Chloe was natural or appropriate. My husband closed his laptop and stretched across the table to place his hand on mine. I backed away and stood up abruptly, desperate to move and do something with the angry fire flowing through me. I began pacing the kitchen, my footsteps echoing across the tile floor. The doorbell rang, interrupting my train of thinking. I froze instantly, on edge. We were not expecting anyone. My husband got up to answer it, while I remained in the kitchen and listened. I heard the door open, followed by the rustling of paper. He came back with a tiny gift addressed to Chloe. "There's no return address," he explained, turning the box over in his hands. As I grabbed the gift from him, I felt something chilly sink in my gut. It was wrapped in pink paper with a bow on top, evidently designed to appeal to a young girl. My fingers tightened around the package as suspicion crept into my mind. I took a knife from the cabinet and carefully cut the tape. Inside came a silver necklace with a heart pendant and a note that simply read, "For Chloe, from someone who cares." My hands began to shake again, this time with a different type of fear. I showed the note to my husband and watched his jaw tighten as he read it. Without saying anything, I walked to the rubbish pail and put the entire item inside. My husband nodded in accord. We both realized we couldn't tell Chloe about this just yet. She was in school, blissfully oblivious that someone was attempting to bring her gifts. Over the next few days, other parcels arrived. A bracelet, a book about family trees, and a photo album with blank pages. Chloe was unaware that each one had gone right into the trash. I began frantically examining the mail, snagging anything odd before she could read it. Then one afternoon, Chloe returned home from school with an odd spring in her step. She put her backpack near the door and virtually skipped into the kitchen where I was preparing dinner. "Mom, I made a new friend online," she said, taking out her phone. My knife paused in the middle of a chop. "Oh?" "Tell me about them," I responded, trying to keep my tone casual as alarm screamed in my head. "His name is Adrian," Chloe explained, reading through her texts. "He knows so much about our family. He told me things about Grandma that even you probably don't know." The knife fell from my grasp, clattering onto the chopping board. My heart pounded as I turned fully to face Chloe. "What kind of things?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Chloe shrugged, still staring at her phone. "Just stuff about when she was younger, where she worked, things like that. He says he's doing genealogy research and found our family really interesting." I came up and carefully removed the phone from her grasp. "Honey, can I see these messages?" Chloe looked puzzled, but handed it over. As I scanned through the discussion, my blood cooled. The letters were delicate and courteous, but there were things only someone close to our family would know, such as my mother's prior work, the place where we used to live, and family members I'd never mentioned to Chloe. "Chloe, I need you to block this person right now," I said, returning the phone to her. "But Mom, why? He's just being friendly." "Please, just do it," I pleaded, my tone harsher than I intended. Chloe's face sank, but she performed as I ordered and blocked the account. I drew her into an embrace, attempting to calm my rushing thoughts. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I just want you to be safe online. You can't trust people you don't know in real life." That evening, after Chloe went to bed, I called my mother. She responded on the second ring, astonished to hear from me so quickly. "I thought you said never to call you," she continued with a tinge of optimism in her tone. "Did you give someone Chloe's contact information?" I questioned, not bothering with pleasantries. There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" "Someone's been sending gifts to Chloe, anonymous packages, and now she's getting messages online from someone who knows way too much about our family. Did you tell someone where we live?" I don't know what you're talking about," my mother stammered, but something about her tone didn't sound right. "Mom, I swear, if you had anything to do with this." "Did Chloe like the gifts?" she questioned abruptly, then attempted to backtrack. "I mean, if someone sent her gifts, did she see them?" My grasp on the phone tightened till my knuckles turned white. "You knew about the gifts?" I asked, my voice dead silent. "You knew, and you didn't think to warn me? I just thought maybe..." If she got to know him a little, through nice gestures. I hung up before she could finish. My entire body was shivering from frustration. I quickly went to our computer and changed everything I could think of, including our online passwords and privacy settings. My husband helped, and we both worked in complete silence. The following few weeks were a nightmare of surveillance. I drove Chloe to and from school every day, no more walking with pals. I attended every school event, scanning the crowds for Ethan. Then I saw him. It was during Chloe's spring concert. He was standing in the back of the auditorium, half covered behind a pillar, but I knew him right away. The same build, the same way of standing with his hands in his pockets. My blood became cold as I watched him watch the stage, where Chloe would shortly perform. I murmured to my spouse, who instantly stood up and headed to the back, but by the time he got to the pillar, Ethan was gone. We stayed for Chloe's performance, but I couldn't concentrate on her stunning singing. My eyes kept scanning the exits, the shadows, and anywhere he could be hiding. This pattern lasted for several weeks. Ethan would appear on the outskirts of Chloe's activities, such as soccer games, school plays, and even outside the grocery store when we were shopping. Always visible enough for me to see him, but never close enough to cross any legal restrictions. He was playing a frightening game, and I was out of my mind. Finally, I could not take it anymore. I left Chloe with my husband one evening and headed to Ethan's place. I discovered his address through public records, my hands trembling as I entered his name into the search field. The house was modest and well kept, with children's toys spread around the front lawn. Seeing those toys made my stomach turn. I pressed the doorbell and waited. When Ethan opened the door, he didn't seem surprised. He had been anticipating me. "Leave my family alone," I said without explanation. "Stop sending gifts. Stop showing up at Chloe's school. Stop trying to contact her online." Ethan leaned against the door frame, a slight smile on his lips. "I don't know what you're talking about," he responded gently. "I'm just a concerned man who wants to know his daughter." "She's not your daughter," I said angrily. "You gave up any right to her the day you admitted what you did to me." His smile had faded slightly. "Legal rights can be challenged," he explained gently. "Especially when the mother is clearly unstable, cutting off family members, and paranoid about innocent gifts." "Are you threatening me?" I inquired, my voice cracking in frustration. "I'm only saying," Ethan went on, his voice maddeningly calm, "that courts tend to prefer rehabilitated individuals who have paid their obligation to society, especially when they can show that the other parent is distancing the youngster from their original family." I turned and walked away before doing something I'd regret, but his words stayed with me all the way home. That night I began chronicling everything, every sighting, gift, and attempt to communicate. I screenshotted the online communications, photographed the packages before throwing them away, and compiled a detailed record of his troubling activity. My husband suggested we contact the police, but I realized we needed more than just my word against his. So we put security cameras throughout our home, dash cams in our vehicles, and I began carrying a voice recorder in my purse. If Ethan wanted to play legal games, I'd be prepared. Chloe's circumstances worsened when she returned home from school one day in tears. Some teenagers were being nasty to me, calling me a liar and stating I had ruined a fine man's life. The whispers were spreading like wildfire around the campus, and I knew who was behind them. I arranged an emergency meeting for Chloe's principal and teachers. Sitting in that conference room, I explained the scenario as calmly as possible, avoiding delving into horrific specifics. The principal, Mrs. Catherine, listened with rising anxiety. "We've actually had a man asking questions about Chloe," her teacher remarked softly. "He claimed to be a family friend planning a surprise for her birthday. We didn't tell him anything, of course, but it was uncomfortable." I gave them Ethan's photo and a copy of the restraining order I'd initiated. They promised to strengthen security and contact me immediately if he reappeared, but I realized I needed to do more. That weekend, I organized a community meeting in our local park. I had lived in this neighborhood for 5 years, formed relationships with our neighbors, and participated in community activities. These individuals knew and trusted me. It was time to take control of the story before Ethan's poison spread any further. Standing in front of the assembled gathering of neighbors, Chloe's friends' parents, and local business owners, I took a deep breath and began speaking. I didn't go into graphic detail, but I did explain that someone from my past who had wounded me was now attempting to insinuate himself into my daughter's life. I begged for their help in keeping our children secure and being wary of strangers asking questions. The response was astounding. Parents recounted their own experiences defending their children, offered to assist with school pickup, and pledged to keep an eye out. Mrs. Jones, Chloe's best friend's mother, approached me afterward. "We've got your back," she stated firmly. "Anyone tries to spread lies about you in this neighborhood, they'll have to go through all of us first." But Ethan was not done. 2 weeks later, I was presented with legal paperwork. My mother and Ethan had filed a petition with Child Protective Services, saying that I was neglecting Chloe's emotional needs by denying her access to her biological family. The accusation struck me like a physical blow. My husband quickly phoned our lawyer while I sat at the kitchen table staring at the documents, stunned. My mother had collaborated with someone from my past to take my daughter away from me. The betrayal went further than anything she had done previously. The next few months were consumed by legal preparations, including gathering evidence and attempting to keep Chloe and Noah's lives normal. We didn't inform Chloe about the legal dispute, but she realized something was amiss. She'd become quieter and more worried, clinging to me like she hadn't since she was a child. The court date came on a gray Tuesday morning. I dressed carefully, selecting a conservative suit that made me appear responsible and stable. My husband held my hand as we walked into the courthouse, with our lawyer, Adrian, lugging boxes of evidence. The courtroom was smaller than I had anticipated. Ethan sat at the plaintiff's table with his lawyer, my mother next to him. She refused to meet my gaze. Ethan, on the other hand, gave me a creepy look. The judge entered, and we all stood. My legs trembled as I watched her take her seat, knowing she had my family's future in her hands. The procedures began with Ethan's lawyer presenting his case, portraying me as an unstable mother who had severed family relations and denied Chloe her lineage. I grasped the table's edge as they presented their evidence. Images of me at the community gathering, which they twisted into proof of my paranoid behavior. They also had recordings of my mother crying about being denied contact to her grandchildren. They even had character witnesses from Ethan's church, who spoke of his transformation and commitment to his family. When it was our turn, Adrian painstakingly presented our proof, which included a schedule of recurring appearances, anonymous packages, screenshots of Chloe's online communications, and security camera footage of Ethan near our home. Each piece strengthened our case, but I noticed the judge's countenance remained neutral, giving nothing away. Then came the testimony phase. My mother took the stand first, blotting her emotions with a tissue as she detailed how I had ripped our family apart and stopped her from having a relationship with Chloe. She stated she had only allowed Ethan to meet Chloe once because she believed in forgiveness and second chances. During cross-examination, Adrian questioned her on the anonymous gifts. She first claimed awareness, but when he produced phone records revealing calls between her and Ethan's number just before each box came, she crumbled. The judge's brow lifted slightly, marking the first breach in her poker face. Next, Ethan testified, describing himself as a reformed guy who had made mistakes in his youth but has since dedicated his life to becoming a good parent and community member. He discussed his other children, his solid marriage, and his charity work. He claimed all he wanted was to know Chloe existed and was well cared for. When Adrian asked Ethan about presenting at Chloe's school functions, he had an explanation for everything. He was simply going by. He conducted lawful business in the neighborhood. He'd never contacted Chloe directly, so what's the harm? His calm manner made my skin crawl. Then something unexpected occurred. The judge requested a quick recess. When we returned, she told us that Chloe had asked to talk with her alone in chambers. My heart has stopped. We had not prepared Chloe for this possibility. She was unaware of the full depth of what was happening. The wait was terrible. 20 minutes seemed like hours. When the judge returned, her expression shifted. She summoned the court back to order and declared that, based on Chloe's testimony and the facts given, she would not only dismiss the petition, but also issue a permanent restraining order against Ethan. Relief surged through me, but Ethan's expression had darkened. As we were leaving the courthouse, he brushed past me and murmured, "This isn't over." My mother ran after him, not looking at me, their connection now completely exposed. The following few weeks were deceptively tranquil. Chloe appeared lighter, even though we hadn't given her the complete story of the court case. She only knew that some people had been disturbing our family, and the judge had ordered them to cease. We attempted to resume normal life, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing. Then the accidents began. First, my husband's brake lines were inexplicably damaged, as discovered by our mechanic during a routine service before anything happened. Then, Chloe's school received an anonymous tip about forbidden chemicals in her locker, prompting a humiliating search that yielded nothing. Our credit cards had been routinely compromised. Someone called child services with a fake claim of neglect. Each instance could be explained separately, but the pattern was clear. Ethan was attempting to disrupt our lives without breaching the restraining order. We reported everything to the police, but without clear evidence linking him to these incidents, their hands were tied. The breaking point occurred when Chloe's best friend's mother, Mrs. Jones, called me in tears. Someone had sent altered images to her husband's office, photos that had been digitally modified to show her in inappropriate positions. The anonymous message stated that she was having an affair with several males in the neighborhood. Her marriage was in crisis. Other families who had helped us began to get similar attacks. Odd calls to employers, bogus reports to various organizations, and digitally manipulated content. Ethan was systematically targeting anyone who had stood by us, attempting to separate us from our support network. Some families backed away, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. Others stayed steadfast, but I could feel the strain on them. The guilt ate away at me. These folks were suffering because they attempted to aid us. Then Chloe returned from school one day with news that shattered our carefully kept serenity. "Mom, we have a new counselor at school," she stated. "Mr. McCathan. He appears quite interested in our family. He keeps asking me how things are at home." My blood became chilly. I quickly called the school, but the secretary confirmed that they had hired a new counselor. His credentials were checked out. His references were solid. There was no cause to suspect him of anything wrong, but the timing was too good. I headed to school the next morning, determined to meet with this new counselor. The man who welcomed me in the counseling office was unknown, professional, and obviously genuine, but something in his eyes when he gazed at me set off all of my alarms. Chloe recounted having several interactions with Mr. McCathan in the days that followed. He was inquiring about her views about family, whether she ever felt like she was missing something in her life, or pondered about extended family members she didn't know. The questions were subtly framed to appear therapeutic, but I detected the trickery. We attempted to request that Chloe be assigned to another counselor, but the school administration refused. They described Mr. McCathan as extremely qualified. Chloe seemed to respond positively to him. They would not make a change until there was clear evidence of misconduct. Meanwhile, the harassing campaign continued. My husband's company has received anonymous complaints concerning his work performance. Noah's daycare was routinely phoned with fake reports of bruising and behavioral difficulties. Every part of our existence was being attacked. Then I got a call that altered everything. It was from a woman named Sarah, who said she needed to speak with me immediately regarding Ethan. We met at a downtown coffee shop where she confessed that she was Ethan's ex-wife and the mother of his other children. Sarah's story was scary. She had left Ethan years ago after realizing that he was behaving improperly toward their teenage babysitter. She'd battled for full custody and won, but in retaliation, Ethan had ruthlessly destroyed her life, causing job losses, relationship breakdowns, and constant court fights. She eventually relocated across the nation to avoid him. "When I heard he was doing this to another family, I had to warn you," she explained, pushing a heavy folder across the table. "This is all I documented, every incident and pattern. He will not stop until he has what he wants, even if it means breaking you." The folder served as a blueprint for Ethan's tactics. Sarah had described how he persuaded people to assist him and how he stayed barely within legal bounds while causing havoc. Most crucially, she provided names and dates that corresponded to similar events in our lives. Armed with this fresh information, we returned to the police. This time, they took note. The pattern of behavior observed among several victims in various states revealed something more serious than harassment. They started an official investigation. But Ethan must have felt the walls closing in. The attacks became more intense. Our home security system went mysteriously offline one night, but nothing was taken. Chloe received a birthday card at school with no signature, just a snapshot of a family reunion she'd never been to. Noah's daycare reported a man matching Ethan's description who inquired about pickup procedures. Then came the night that almost destroyed us. I woke up at 3 a.m. to discover Chloe's bedroom window open, her curtains flowing in the breeze. She was still sleeping in her bed, uninjured, but someone had entered our home. On her desk was a photo of Ethan holding a baby with the caption, "She looks just like you did," on the back. The authorities discovered no fingerprints, DNA, or anything other than the photograph. The security cameras revealed nothing. They had been disabled remotely. Ethan had told us he could reach Chloe whenever he wanted. The message was clear. The restraining order was meaningless to him. We transferred Chloe into our bedroom that night. I didn't sleep for days and jumped at every sound. My spouse took time off from work to help with security. We were trapped in our own home, terrified to let our children out of sight. Mr. McCathan suggested Chloe attend a special family dynamics group therapy session, which intensified the situation at school. When I declined, he became concerned about my resistance to Chloe's emotional development. Suddenly, I was portrayed as the troublesome parent, blocking my child from seeking care. Other parents began receiving calls from Mr. McCathan, who expressed concern over Chloe's living condition. He claimed she exhibited emotional neglect and appeared isolated from her wider family. The seeds of distrust he planted spread fast through the school community's gossip mill. Chloe began coming home distraught, claiming that kids were wondering why her mother didn't want her to be happy, why she wasn't allowed to meet her real family. The psychological warfare was taking a toll on all of us, but particularly on her. Then Sarah called with vital news. She'd been following Ethan's movements via a network of his other victims she'd met over the years. He had lately contacted a lawyer who specialized in overturning restraining orders and securing custody for reformed parents. We knew everything had been part of a broader scheme. The harassment was not just retaliation. It was intended to make me appear crazy, paranoid, and unfit. Every reaction I made was documented and distorted to help a future custody lawsuit. I made the painful choice to withdraw Chloe from school for the remainder of the year, claiming safety concerns. The school threatened truancy charges, but our counsel recommended that it was preferable than leaving her vulnerable to Mr. McCathan's influence. Isolation was awful. Chloe missed her pals and her daily life. She started asking things that we couldn't fully answer without hurting her emotionally. How do you explain to a youngster that the biological father she has never known is dangerous, and that her grandmother picked him over her own daughter? Our marriage was strained under the burden. My spouse remained sympathetic, but I could sense tiredness in his eyes. He signed up to be Chloe's father, but not for this never-ending war. As we considered our alternatives, we had more late-night arguments. Should we move? Change our names? How far would we have to run to avoid Ethan's grasp? However, running seemed like letting him win. There was no guarantee he would not locate us again. Then the private investigator we hired discovered something crucial. Mr. McCathan was not who he claimed to be. His credentials were fake. His references are bogus. He was actually Ethan's cousin, and he had previously assisted him in tracking down and pressuring past victims. This discovery broke the case open. The school was appalled that they had failed to thoroughly vet him. The police now had concrete evidence of a complex scheme. Warrants were issued for both Ethan and the phony counselor. However, they escaped before authorities could apprehend them. Ethan's house was unoccupied and neat. Mr. McCathan never returned to school. My mother's phone was disconnected. They had all gone underground. Not knowing was almost as bad as the harassment itself. Every stranger on the street might be monitoring us. Every unexpected noise caused my heart to accelerate. We were constantly hypervigilant. 2 weeks after they disappeared, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the time, date, and location. A park where Chloe used to play as a child. At the bottom, Ethan's handwriting, "Come alone, if you want this to end." I realized it was a trap. My entire being begged me not to go. But I was exhausted, tired of running, looking over my shoulder, and watching my family suffer. Perhaps it was time to confront this straight on. I presented the letter to my husband and Sarah. Both implored me not to leave. But I had already made up my mind. This had to stop, one way or another. We made a compromise. I would go, but they would be close, ready to contact the police if necessary. The night before the conference, I sat with Chloe and watched her calm face. She deserved better than a life of dread and secrecy. Noah deserved to grow up in the absence of Ethan's threats. My husband deserved a woman who didn't always peek over her shoulder. I thought about my mother and wondered if she was with Ethan, if she was a part of the final play. The lady who should have protected me had become my adversary's strongest supporter. Despite the passage of time, the betrayal remained fresh. As dawn came on the day of the meeting, I braced myself for whatever may come. The evidence we had acquired was securely preserved with our lawyer. Chloe and Noah were with trusted friends at a location Ethan had no idea about. If something happened to me, they would be safe. I drove to the park while the morning mist lingered on the ground. My hands remained steady on the wheel. My thoughts were clear. The cat-and-mouse game had lasted long enough. Today, it will come to an end in some form. The park was deserted, but for a lone figure sitting on a seat near the playground. As I got closer, I saw it wasn't Ethan, But my mother. She appeared older and frailer than when I last saw her in court. Her hands shook as she held her purse. "He's not coming," she replied as I neared. "He sent me to deliver a message." I stood a few feet away, prepared to run if necessary. "What message?" She took out an envelope and held it out with shaky fingers. "He is leaving the nation. He wanted you to know he was done battling. But he had conditions." I did not take the envelope. "What are the conditions?" "He wants a picture of Chloe every year for her birthday, sent to a post office box. There is no need to provide a return address. Just so he knows she's fine." My mother's voice cracked. "He says if you agree with this, he'll vanish forever." If not, what?" I demanded. She finally met my gaze, and I saw terror. "He says he'll spend his life making you unhappy, that everything you've seen thus far is nothing compared to what he is capable of." I stared at her, this lady who gave birth to me, who should have protected me, who put my greatest threat ahead of her own daughter. "And you are assisting him, still." "I don't have a choice," she muttered. "He knows things about me, things that would destroy what little life I have left." "You always had a choice," I explained. "You just never chose me." I turned and went away, leaving her to cry on the bench. I did not take the envelope. I wouldn't negotiate with Ethan and wouldn't even give him a photo of Chloe. He has stolen enough from us. As I drove home, I called the police to report the meeting. They spotted my mother still in the park, but she claimed to have no knowledge of Ethan's location. The envelope merely included the P.O. The box contained information and a photo of Ethan's other children, serving as a final, twisted reminder of what Chloe was missing. That happened 3 months ago. Ethan has not been discovered, despite a nationwide search. The bogus counselor was apprehended while attempting to enter into Canada and is currently awaiting trial. My mother was charged with aiding and abetting, but she received probation owing to her age and allegations of coercion. We've gently started rebuilding our lives. Chloe is in treatment with a genuine counselor, working through the trauma of the previous year without completely realizing its scope. She's back at school, with additional security measures in place. Noah is blissfully unaware of the dangers that surround us. Throughout the hardship, the community that supported us grew stronger. Mrs. Jones's marriage has weathered the attack on her image. Parents are more concerned about school security. What Ethan intended to destroy has really brought us closer together. But I still check the locks twice a night. I'm still scanning crowds for his face. I still jump when unexpected packages arrive. Sarah informs me that this hypervigilance may never totally subside. It is the cost of surviving someone like Ethan. My husband and I are also in counseling, trying to work through the strain this has imposed on our marriage. He has never faltered in his commitment to Chloe or our family, but this battle has left us both scarred. Trust, once destroyed by those who are supposed to protect you, is difficult to rebuild. Chloe recently asked me why she didn't have grandparents like her pals. I told her a version of the truth. Occasionally, families split up when people make decisions that harm others. She appeared to accept this, but I know more difficult issues may arise as she grows older. The investigation revealed that Ethan had done this before, several times. Sarah was not his only victim. There was a trail of women from multiple states who had waged similar battles and lived in terror of his revenge. Some had surrendered to his demands, others had run. A few others, including ourselves, had fought back. We've developed a support network among the survivors of Ethan's obsession. We share information, look for signals of his reappearance, and offer one another the understanding that can only come from shared trauma. It's a sisterhood that neither of us wanted to join. The authorities suspect Ethan did depart the nation, possibly to a country lacking extradition treaties. But I do not feel safe. People like Ethan don't just give up. They withdraw, reorganize, and return when you least expect it. So we remain cautious, leading our lives while being conscious of the shadows. I glanced at the screen of my laptop, reloading the news page for the 3rd time that morning. Nothing about Ethan. The bogus counselor's trial was scheduled for next month, but Ethan remained a ghost. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, forgotten next to the stack of legal documents Adrian had sent over. Chloe hurried into the kitchen, her knapsack thrown over one shoulder. She grabbed an apple off the counter and kissed my cheek. My husband followed, straightening his tie as Noah clung to his leg, dressed in dinosaur pajamas and ready for school. "All set for the day?" I questioned Chloe, forcing a natural tone in my voice. She nodded and halted at the door. "Mom, Lily's having a sleepover this weekend. Can I go?" Lily was Mrs. Jones's daughter. The request should have been easy, but nothing seemed simple anymore. I looked at my spouse, who gave me an encouraging nod. "Let me talk to Lily's mom first," I whispered. Chloe's face dropped somewhat, but she did not dispute. She recognized that our new normal entailed extra safeguards. After they had left, I called Mrs. Jones. She informed me that they had installed new security cameras and that her husband would be home throughout the weekend. We devised a system in which Chloe would text me every 2 hours, and I would pick her up right away if anything felt wrong. That afternoon, I met with the prosecutor in charge of the false counselor's case. She distributed photographs of surveillance tape from several locations around her desk, revealing Ethan's cousin trailing other families years before. "The pattern is undeniable," she explained. "We have linked him to 7 other cases. Your documentation enabled us to connect the dots. He is looking at severe times." But Ethan remained unreachable, buried somewhere beyond our reach. I picked up Chloe from school, focusing on my mirrors rather than the road ahead. At a stoplight, I saw a car 3 vehicles back that had been following us since school. My pulse quickened. I took one unexpected turn, then another. The automobile proceeded straight. Just paranoia, but I couldn't get rid of the feeling. At home, I discovered my husband on the phone with our bank. Someone attempted to access our accounts from an IP address in Mexico. The attempt failed due to our new security protocols, but the location chilled my blood. Mexico does not have an extradition treaty for harassment-related accusations. Chloe did her homework at the kitchen table as I made dinner, attempting to keep our schedule. Noah played with bricks at her feet and occasionally showed her his handiwork. These calm moments felt valuable and fragile, like soap bubbles that could burst with any touch. My phone vibrated. Sarah had sent a message to the support group. "New victim in Arizona, same pattern, gifts, online contact, escalation, she needs our help." I called the woman that night after the kids were asleep. Her voice trembled as she detailed finding Ethan at her daughter's dance recital, the anonymous packages, and the bogus social media profiles. I led her through the process of documenting everything, gave her our lawyer's contact information, and explained what had worked for us. "Will this ever end?" she asked. I did not have an answer. The next morning, I received a registered letter from my mother's lawyer. She was suing for grandparents' visitation privileges. My hands trembled as I read the file. She stated that I was alienating her grandchildren by denying them their heritage. The wording reflected Ethan's threats. That afternoon, Adrian reviewed the documents. "She has no case," he told me. "The court has already ruled on this, but we have to reply. Additional legal fees. More time in the courts. More energy is spent fighting rather than living." Chloe's sleepover approaches. I helped her pack, including the emergency phone I had bought her. She rolled her eyes and put it into her sleeping bag without complaint. When I dropped her off, Mrs. Jones squeezed my hand. "We've got 6 parents on rotation tonight," she remarked quietly. "She'll be safe." I spent the evening pacing our house and checking my phone every few minutes. Chloe's texts arrived like clockwork, making pizza, watching movies. Lily's father is teaching us card tricks. Each message eased the tension in my chest slightly. My husband dragged me onto the couch and wrapped his arms around me. Noah had fallen asleep on his chest, thumb in mouth. We sat silently, the weight of our new reality bearing down on us. The doorbell rang at 10 p.m. We both froze. My husband carefully placed Noah on the couch and approached the door, while I grabbed my phone and prepared to call 911. He looked through the peephole and spotted our elderly neighbor carrying a misdelivered parcel. We laughed later, but it was hollow. This was how we lived now. Every unexpected moment represents a possible hazard. I picked Chloe up the following morning. She raved about how much fun they'd had, seemingly unconscious of the parent patrol that had been watching them all night. Her tenacity astounded me, but I worried what scars she hid beneath her bright appearance. That week, the fictitious counselor, Marcus, reached an agreement. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he gave specific details regarding Ethan's network. The prosecutor contacted me to provide me with updates. They had discovered 3 other accomplices, all of whom had been captured. Marcus, however, stated that he was unaware of Ethan's current location. "He compartmentalized everything," she added. "Marcus only knew his part." I went to Marcus's sentence. He avoided looking at me as the judge read the charges. 15 years in prison with the prospect of parole after 7 years. As they dragged him away, he finally glanced at me. His mouth moved, producing words that I couldn't understand. Later, the bailiff informed me. He said, he won't stop. Spring arrived with brutal normalcy. Chloe auditioned for the school play and earned a small role. Noah started preschool 3 mornings per week. My husband was promoted. Life continued to march forward, even as we glanced back. Then came the video. It arrived by email from an untraceable address. The subject line stated, "She's beautiful." My finger hovered above the erase button. But I had to know. The video showed Chloe at her school play practice, which was shot from outside the theater windows. The angle suggested that someone in the parking lot was using a telephoto lens. I drove to the school immediately and gave the principal the footage. They investigated security footage but discovered nothing untoward. Whoever filmed it was aware of the camera's blind areas. We upped security again. But how many times could we raise the barriers higher? The cops tracked down the email to an internet cafe in Tijuana. Ethan was teasing us from beyond their grasp, showing us that he could still monitor and violate our boundaries whenever he wanted. Chloe observed enhanced security at school. Is it because of him? She inquired one evening, not bothering to explain who. I intended to wait till she was older to explain everything. But she deserved the truth. I informed her that someone from the past was attempting to disrupt our family, but we were safe. She nodded seriously, suddenly appearing older than her age. Is that why Grandma doesn't come to visit? She asked. The question pierced my heart. I emphasized that occasionally grown-ups make decisions that harm relationships. She appeared to understand more than I had given her credit for. My mother's visitation lawsuit moved slowly. Her lawyer continued to file motions, stretching out the process. Each court appearance resulted in lost time at work, increased stress, and further legal fees. She sat across the courtroom, each time appearing smaller, but her desire remained unwavering. During one hearing, she breached decorum by calling out to me as I passed. I just want to see them, she exclaimed. Please. I'm their grandmother. The bailiff silenced her, but her comments echoed. Part of me worried if I was being overly harsh. Then I remembered her sitting beside Ethan in court, choosing him over me yet again. Summer brought forth a fresh development. The woman from Arizona contacted to say Ethan had made contact. He had sent her a letter proposing a deal similar to what my mother had given me. Images in exchange for peace. She was pondering it. Don't, I told her. It never ends with just photos. He'll always want more. But I recognized the fatigue in her voice, the same weariness I felt. How long could we keep this degree of vigilance? Sarah planned a conference call with all of the survivors she'd discovered, 12 women from 8 states, each with a similar story. We exchanged notes, talked strategies, and considered organizing a formal advocacy group. There was strength in numbers, but also a tremendous grief that so many had suffered. Years ago, one woman gave in to Ethan's demands. She provided photos, permitted supervised visits, and attempted to maintain harmony. However, he had used that access to gradually turn her daughter against her. Now her daughter lives with Ethan, certain that her mother is the evil. The cautionary tale increased my determination. Chloe's birthday approached. I organized a small gathering for close friends and trustworthy family members. A package arrived that morning. A huge package without a return address. My husband intercepted it before Chloe could notice. Inside, there was an expensive dollhouse with the following note. Every princess needs a castle. Happy birthday, sweetheart. We photographed everything as evidence and then destroyed it. Chloe had no idea. She was enjoying her wonderful day with her pals, ignorant of the shadow attempting to touch her. The investigation became transnational in scope. Because Ethan's acts took place across state lines, the FBI became involved. An agent came to our house, inspected our proof, and asked extensive questions. They were putting together a strong case when they discovered him. He's made mistakes, the agent informed us. The video, the money transfers, and the network he constructed all leave tracks. We will find him. But weeks passed without any development. Ethan had learned from his mistakes and hid his tracks effectively. The agent's calls grew less frequent. The case was still open, but it felt like it was getting colder. My husband advised us to consider moving. His organization maintained offices in London, Singapore, and Sydney. We could start over, somewhere Ethan couldn't reach. But running seemed like capitulation. There was no guarantee he wouldn't follow. Chloe overheard us talk about it one night. I don't want to move, she stated from the doorway. My pals are here. My life is here. She was correct. We couldn't allow Ethan to steal any more from us than he had already. The bogus counselor's jail interactions were monitored in the hopes that he might make contact with Ethan. Instead, Marcus sent me a letter via his lawyer. He claimed to have information on Ethan's whereabouts, but he demanded a trade, support for his parole in exchange for his knowledge. Adrian urged against it, but necessity forced me to consider it. My husband talked me down, reminding me that Marcus had already proven himself to be a liar and manipulator. Fall has arrived. School began anew. Chloe started middle school, which would have been stressful even without our concerns. We talked with administrators, implemented new security processes, and gave updated images of Ethan and his known associates. Noah began to question why we were always so careful and why we checked the locks so frequently. His innocence became another casualty of Ethan's campaign. Then my mother suffered a heart attack. My sister called from the hospital. Mom was stable, but feeble. She had been asking for me, for her grandchildren. My sister begged me to come. Said this could be our last chance for reconciliation. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for an hour, contemplating. My husband waited with me without pressing either way. Finally, I entered, alone. She appeared weak on the hospital bed, with oxygen tubes in her nose. Her eyes welled with tears when she saw me. "I'm sorry," she muttered. "For everything. I chose incorrectly. I see it now." I wanted to believe her, but faith had been broken too many times. I told her I hoped she would heal, but I couldn't promise anything more. She nodded, appearing to age more before my eyes. As I was leaving, she shouted out weakly, "Occasionally, he contacts me, from Mexico. I could help you find him." I paused at the door but did not turn around. "You've helped him enough," I remarked before leaving. The FBI agent called that night. My mother had previously approached them, promising cooperation. Whether it was true guilt or the terror of dying alone, she was finally making a decision. Her information proved useful. She offered email addresses, phone numbers Ethan had used, and information regarding his financial resources. The probe gained new momentum. Chloe's school play began in a filled auditorium. I sat in the front row, my spouse filming while I surveyed the audience. She delivered her lines flawlessly, shining beneath the stage lights. For a little moment, I forgot I was terrified. Chloe later approached me at the cast party. "Mom, I know you're scared for me," she added. "But I'm okay. We're okay. Don't let him take this from us too." My 12-year-old daughter has more insight than I had anticipated. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Ethan's wife. His current wife contacted Sarah. She had discovered our support group online and recognized the pattern. He had been domineering, skeptical, and paranoid. She wanted to go, but she was concerned for her children's safety. We quickly initiated a conference call. She'd been in Mexico City for 2 years. Ethan worked in private security, applying the skills he learned while following and monitoring us, to protect affluent clientele. The irony was not lost on any of us. She promised to cooperate with the authorities in exchange for protection. Within days, Mexican federal police had set up surveillance at Ethan's flat. The FBI worked with local officials to develop a solid case. I couldn't sleep the night of the anticipated arrest. Chloe and Noah stayed at a friend's place just in case. My husband and I sat on the couch, phones in hand, waiting for the news. The call arrived in the morning. They had arrested Ethan without incident. He had been napping, apparently secure in his safety. They discovered proof of his surveillance on many families, including plans for future harassment and extensive files on each of us. The extradition process would take time, but he was already in detention. Given his background and flight risk, the agent informed me that he would not be released on bail. I cried for the first time in months. My husband held me as years of strain were released. It was not over. There would be trials, witnesses, and other legal battles. But he got caught. We brought up the kids and informed them that the terrible father had been detained. Chloe held me close. "Does this mean we can stop being scared?" inquired the woman. "We can start," I responded. My mother died 2 weeks later. Regardless, I attended the funeral. My sister understood why I did not bring the children. I bid goodbye to the woman who was supposed to protect me, but chose the wrong path until it was almost too late. I forgave her in my heart, even though I could not forget. Ethan's extradition proceeded slowly through foreign courts. His wife sued for divorce and custody, and then joined our support group. We assisted her in navigating the system, which we were intimately familiar with. Chloe auditioned for the spring musical and won the lead. Noah joined Little League. My spouse and I started having dating nights again. We slowly and painstakingly reconstructed normal. The trial date was established for the summer. I would have to testify and face Ethan again. But this time, I would not be alone. Sarah would be present, as would the woman from Arizona. Others had discovered bravery in our common strength. Chloe inquired whether she may also testify. I want to tell them he doesn't get to hurt our family anymore, she told me. We decided, with her therapist's okay, that she may provide a written statement instead. I still check locks, continue to observe mirrors, still jump at unexpected sounds. Perhaps I always will. But now I'm also seeing Chloe sing on stage, help Noah with his schoolwork, kiss my hubby goodnight without fear. Every second counts. Ethan took years from us, but he did not take everything. We survived. We are healing. We are free. The final shot in our family album depicts us at Chloe's musical, with her in costume, Noah on my hip, and my husband's arm around us all. We're really smiling. The auditorium behind us is filled with members of our community, the individuals that stood with us. That is the image I want to remember, not the terror, custody battles, restraining orders, or sleepless nights.